Advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I am Shannon Penrod. We are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's Friday. We've had a really interesting week here. And when I say interesting, I mean lots of really good things. We've had some technical difficulties from time to time, some gremlins dropping in, but we've had some really interesting guests this week, some pretty fascinating. There are gremlins popping up. You know, when I think back over the week, and I was talking with my husband last night about the week and saying, you know, just the slice of people that we've had on the show this week, going back to Tuesday when we had Carrie Magro on, 24-year-old young man with a PDD diagnosis at the age of 4, who is now a motivational speaker. And if you didn't see that interview, go back and watch it, because I know I walked out of here today and going, wow. Walking on air, just going, wow, what an exciting young man. And, you know, he is one of the many faces of autism. And then on Wednesday during Let's Talk Autism with Shannon and Nancy, we had Danny Bowman on, and she's 17 years old, has an autism diagnosis, has her own film company, is an animator, has 2 children's books that are out, is just a really happy, lovely, driven young woman who's excited about going to colleges, has colleges that are interested in having her come, asking them to come and tour and see them. And she is an entirely different face on the autism spectrum. And then yesterday, we had Justin and Zev from The Amazing Race in here, and Zev is on the autism spectrum, has an Asperger diagnosis, a completely different face on the autism spectrum. And, you know, I loved one of the things that Danny said to us, and it's something that we say here a lot, is that once you've met one person on the autism spectrum, you've met one person on the autism spectrum. And I really want to drive home that with each one of these people that we dropped in with and had drop in with us this week, totally different individuals, facing different challenges, having different issues, having different dreams, having different passion. And you and I know that that's the case with all of our kids on the autism spectrum, but I'm just happy that we had the opportunity to show that in such a short period of time, because I think it's really representative of this great big spectrum that we live in. And what's possible, really. You know, not everyone is going to go and want to do the things that these 3 individuals are doing, but I think it drives home the point that there is so much that is available, and so much that our kids and our teenagers and our adults can do. And the running theme through all of them that I heard, and I would expect and I would hope to hear, oh, well, you know, I got this treatment and I got this support and I got that. But quite honestly, that wasn't the running theme. The running theme through all of these individuals was, I had someone in my life who supported me, that supported me in doing what I want to do, and that gave me opportunity to be able to do what I wanted to do. That's what I heard, which I thought was really interesting. And that's, as a parent, that was my takeaway, to go home and say, I want to make sure, I think I am, but I always want to be the cheerleader in my child's corner. Always. In any case, we are going to be with you on this day, and we've got some more interesting stuff that's coming up today. It's Friday, so Friday is always a cornucopia of goodness, right? We're going to be talking about topics having to do with life on the autism spectrum and how we can be more efficient, more effective at helping an individual on the autism spectrum to reach their fullest potential, right? That's what it's all about being here. We do talk about ABA a lot because it is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It's not the only thing that we talk about here because we gotta have a life amongst all this, right? There is a life that needs to be led here, but I will say that when we use the tools of ABA, we get to more of that life in a more productive and happy way. That's been my experience. I am not an expert in ABA. I am not an expert in autism, but I am somebody who's really passionate on the ground here in this battle to help our kids. My son was diagnosed with autism at 2.5. He's now 9. And I remember what it was like in those early days. I'm reminded of them a lot in your stories and different things that come up. And I remember how hard it was in the beginning and feeling that I was alone. I want to be a person that's here for you, that plugs you into the things that you need. That's exactly why I'm here. To be a support, to tell you you're doing a good job, to tell you how you can get information about more things that you can be doing with your individual child, because there is no one size fits all here. And if it ever sounds like I am saying there's a one size fits all, please know that you've tuned in the middle of a sentence, because I am a firm believer that our kids are all individuals and they all need very individualized consideration, time, tools, skills, programs, and care. So, in any case, I hope that you will participate in this conversation and take the information that you need to work with the individual that you are spending time with, whether you're parent, teacher, practitioner, right? And I hope that you will let us know how we can help you. If you have a question for an expert, I know later on today we're going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and if you have a question for him, if you have a question for anybody who's been on the show, if you have a question still for Carrie Magro, if you have a question for Danny Bowman, there are ways that you can participate in this conversation. So let's start to talk about some of those different ways. If you're watching us on Autism-Live right now, -live.com, right? You will see that there is a screen there. You see my picture, and next to it, it says Shannon is answering. That means that and I'm just realizing that I haven't pushed the button yet. I'm telling you, you can go there, and I haven't pushed the button there. We had a lot of stuff going on this morning. Can you tell? I'm discombobulated this morning. Do you ever get that way? I'm going to push the button right now as we speak. So if you're there and you're watching, it is going to change right before your eyes. So here I go. I can push this button there. It now says Shannon is answering, and that box is active right now. You can go in, type a question, hit enter, and it shows up magically right here on my screen. And you and I can be having a conversation, and more importantly, you can be having a conversation with somebody else that I have in the studio, somebody else I have on the phone line, or somebody else I have in Skype. Ask away the questions that you want in real time. There is no cost for it. You don't have to log in. You don't have to give anybody your credit card or your email address. Nobody is going to be sending you emails, right? It's just plain and simple. You say what you want to say, it shows up here, and we can have that conversation. If you're watching and it says rebroadcast, then that box is not active. And if you're watching us in all the other ways that there are to watch us, you're thinking, okay, I don't have this box, Shannon, so what am I going to do? Lots of ways for you to participate in the conversation. You can email us 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We will address your question on the next available live show, and we will also send you a written response because we want to support you. So feel free to participate in that way. I mentioned that you can phone in as well. You can. This is one of the areas where we've been having some technical difficulties this week. So if you've been calling in and going, I just want you to know we're on this, trying to fix the issue, and I think it's working right now. So you can phone in. If you don't get through to us for whatever reason, you can leave us a message and we will get back to you as soon as we possibly can. By the way, you can also Skype with us, and I'm hoping that we're going to be Skyping a little bit later on today with a wonderful individual that I'll tell you more about if we see that it is going to work. I don't want to tease you. But in any case, you do have the ability to Skype with us too. You do. If you want to call us up, you can Skype in with us. If you've got camera on your computer and you'd like your picture to be right up next to mine, we can be having a conversation that way. Or we can talk audio only, whichever is preferable for you. It's all good. It's a conversation, right? And you can always talk to us via Facebook. We have a new Facebook page. We appreciate your likes when you're on Facebook, and we love it when you guys interact with us there. It's a really great way to interact, whether it's answering the question of the day, commenting on a video that we post on Facebook, sharing it. If you see something on our site that you want to share, share away, because we're about disseminating good information. That's really what we're about. And by the way, you can also tweet with us. We really enjoy interacting with you guys on Twitter. So all of those ways are available, and yet there are even more ways, because I mentioned that there are other ways to watch our show. You can be watching us on blip.tv. On Blip, you can search old shows and find topics that you want, dates that you know that you missed. If you say, I love The Amazing Race, and Shannon, I didn't know that you were having Justin and Zev on, I have to watch this, you can go back and watch yesterday's episode. And if you're so into Justin and Zev that you don't want to see the rest of it, you can fast forward until you get to them and watch only that part. And if the phone rings while you're in the middle of watching it, you can pause it and come back to it right where you left off. Gotta love technology. By the way, you can also watch those old, they're like 24 hours old in this digital age, that makes it old, the archives of Autism Live on our YouTube channel. Really enjoy on YouTube, because then easy way to share too. You can say, hey, did anybody see this? And we do appreciate it when you share information, because the point is to get information to the people that need it, right? You can also download us for free on iTunes, no cost. Gotta love that. Full picture and sound on iTunes, no cost. And we are available on Ustream as well. If there is another way that you would like to be watching us, I hope that you will let us know. We like to be available in the places that you guys would like to watch us. All right, we like to start every morning with something that I fondly refer to as the jargon day. This is the time of day when we take on one word, one phrase, one anagram, and we demystify it for you so that you can start to make friends with the jargon. Oh my goodness. The jargon, the jargon, the jargon. On top of everything else, right? Life isn't easy to begin with, and sometimes you just have stuff that is absolutely ridiculous. I know just before we went live, I'm having to deal with a dishwasher that is broken that you would think it's a dishwasher, right? It's a dishwasher. It is not a big thing, and yet it is turning into the biggest thing because of a repair person. And then on top of that, and you have those kinds of things going on right now too, whether it's a dishwasher or it's something else, but you got life things that you have to deal with, right? But when it comes to your child, and you want to get help for your child, and you're asking experts about your child, and then they start speaking in alphabet land or jargon terms, and you go, really? On top of the broken dishwasher, really? I'd like to understand. And we ask the experts all the time to stop using the jargon so that we can understand, but we got to meet them halfway. We really do. In fact, I think we got to go a little bit further than halfway, because there are kids. And because this is not something that we're just going to deal with for a small period of time. Autism is not that extended weekend thing where you go, wow, glad we got through that, right? This is a long haul, so we have to learn these terms and begin to understand them. It's just part of the journey. It's not the most pleasant part of the journey, right? I think there's a certain amount of resentment that this is part of the journey, but make friends with the jargon. So we got to do it a little bit at a time, I think. I think that when we teach our children, we try to be kind and set them up for success. Let's set ourselves up for success by doing it a little bit at a time. Okay. So here we go. We're going to give you a term, tell you what it means, and then give you a really watered down version of it so that you can start to understand what it is. Today's term, because we've been talking about things having to do with language all week long, and not just spoken language, but all communication. So our term today is SLP. And if your child is over the age of 3, you probably have seen this on a piece of paper or heard this term, and it's one of those terms that just gets batted around, right? You know, people say, well, when you go to the IEP and you're getting your BIP and the SLP is there and she wants to talk, right? And you go, ah, and the OT is there, but the APE person, you go, what just happened to my life? So I like to focus on the terms that you most want to be familiar with, right? We talk about IEPs all the time, individualized education plan, and somebody who better be at your IEP, if you have a child on the autism spectrum, is an SLP. They should be in the room if you are having an IEP meeting. So what is the SLP? It is the speech and language pathologist. I know, you go, oh. And most of us kind of have an idea of what that is, but I do think it's worth pointing out that our working definition for this is a professional trained to help your child increase language and oral motor skills. And by the way, when we say language skills, this includes social language. So I feel very comfortable in saying if your child has an autism spectrum diagnosis, whether it be PDD-NOS, autism, or Asperger's, there should be an SLP at the IEP meeting. And it is my personal, this is not any kind of expert opinion, this is my personal as a parent who used to be a teacher and hears parents talk a lot about what happens at IEP meetings, that what I hear a lot from families who have an individual, a child with Asperger's, is that sometimes, in some cases, and it's just mind-boggling to me, that if the child has Asperger's, that the SLP person is not at the IEP. And just to clarify a little bit, because this is something that has come up in conversation a lot, and somebody had sent in a question about this yesterday, a Asperger diagnosis, when we have the classic autism diagnosis, there's 3 categories, right? There is a delay or lack of social skills, there's the delay or lack of language, and then there is the repetitive and restrictive behaviors category. And that when we're talking about Asperger's, it means that that category of delay or lack of language communication is pulled out. The other 2 things are there. There's the social component and there is the component of restrictive and repetitive behaviors. And sometimes there is a component of a physical lack of coordination, but that delay of language acquisition, not in the Asperger's diagnosis. And so I guess there are some people out there who think that it is not necessary for an SLP to be on the team if the individual has Asperger's. And I really hope that as parents, you guys challenge that in a really nice way, because we know that honey gets more than vinegar, right? Although vinegar is necessary sometimes, cleans things, right? But that you ask for the SLP if your child has an Asperger diagnosis, and that you ask for them specifically for the social language component. One of the things that our SLP does, I have to get our SLP to come on the show because she's really phenomenal. And I've mentioned before that she has devised a program called Mortimer Mouth that I just wish that more of you had access to. But she also, and I don't think it's just at our school by any stretch of the imagination, we have a lunch bunch program for kids who are acquiring language and working on social language skills, where they once a week get a lunch date with a group of peers that are peers that are reinforcing to them, kids that they get along with, and they sit down and have like a lunch date. And it's supervised, so language is encouraged, and when necessary, somebody who's supervising will jump in and facilitate, right? It's not so much that it's this teaching moment, but it becomes a teaching moment. It's a natural environment training moment, but they facilitate and help overcome things like when the conversation is broken down. We'll facilitate to help so that there is more opportunity for the kids to be able to have that social language moment. They eat lunch together, and then they play a game together, and they're given some sort of task. Maybe it's deciding what the game is going to be, or they give them some kind of problem-solving thing to do, like a team-building thing. It helps with social language, but it helps in a whole lot of other ways too. Helps to make friends. It's a really, really wonderful thing. And that's what happens when you have an SLP who is on the team, who is really looking at language as a global experience. I think it's very hard to separate language and social language. In fact, you see in the DSM-5 that's been proposed that they're not making them separate categories anymore, because a lot of people have said over the years, these things are so intertwined that to separate them is really not beneficial for our individuals that are on the Asperger end of things. I think they've been left out of a lot of support that they could have benefited from in the social language arena. So SLP, really important person at the table at the IEP meeting. I find that they are generally I'm speaking in huge generalities here, but a lot of people who go into the speech and language pathology area tend to be really patient-centered people. They're not expecting huge, like that change, they're very patient. Not in all cases, but they tend to be. I think that's what success in that arena takes, is somebody who is really patient. So the people who stick with it and do really well, I think, are the patient people. Make friends with your SLP because they are somebody who is going to drive a lot of progress for your child on a school campus. A good one anyway. All right. It is time for the question of the day. The question of the day is meant to get you thinking and hopefully to give you an opportunity either to vent or laugh or share or brag, because we got a lot of stuff going on, right? A lot of stuff going on. So today's question, I love this. What's the funniest thing that has happened to you in relation to autism? From time to time we ask, I've asked before, what's the most ridiculous thing that somebody has said to you? But I want to know, what's the funniest thing that's happened to you in relation to autism? We've had some pretty hilarious things happen over the years, things that have just, reduced us to tears. But I still go back to the funniest thing that has ever happened in relation to autism is that when we were doing toilet training, and we were talking about this yesterday about how important it is that, every time in the beginning that they are using the toilet appropriately, it's a party. And every time the dinger goes off, and, we used to do the potty dance, the potty conga, all of us, my husband, myself, and any therapist, my mother, if she was there, the timer goes, it's potty time, and we conga off to the bathroom, laughing and singing and doing the Lindy Hop and all of these things. And then if my son would go, he would be like, yay, big excitement, right? And you just get into that mode. And I gotta say, in the beginning, especially when you've come off this period of time of where you're like, oh my gosh, what's wrong with my child? And what does all this mean? Suddenly celebrating every 20 minutes feels weird. Okay, so if it feels weird to you, know that it felt weird. It no longer feels weird to us to celebrate at a moment's notice, but it did in the beginning. I think it was really good for us as a family because it lightened us up, gave us something to laugh about on a daily basis. But we got so into that mode of celebrating whenever somebody peed in the potty. And we were here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders for a clinic because my son received his therapy here. And initially, initially we would come every 2 weeks. There was an appointment, they call it clinic, that you come in every 2 weeks, and the whole family comes in, and all the therapists that work on the team and the team supervisor is there, and it's a 2-hour long meeting every other week where they work with the child in front of you. You can ask questions, they ask about what's going on, they tweak programs, you look at the progress, you see what has to happen, and everybody gets on the same page, so that communication is really, it's never more than 2 weeks until everybody can communicate. Really, really amazing. Takes a lot to coordinate it. You can't even imagine, but really, really worthwhile. Well, the room that we would frequently, there are several different clinic rooms here, and the room that we would be in usually was directly across the hall from the restroom facilities, which are all very tiled and a little echoey, right? So that if there is a conversation happening in the bathroom and it's loud enough, you can hear it in the clinic room, or at least recognize loud sounds. And there was a moment in the clinic when my husband excused himself so that he could use the restroom, and he left the door to the clinic room open, went into the restroom, and was, successfully using the restroom, and because he was so used to it, went, yay! Because he was peeing in the potty. And but he was not with my son. It was just that he was so used to celebrating anytime somebody went pee in the potty that you could hear him going, yay! In the bathroom, and we all lost it and fell about the floor, and it was hysterically funny. And of course my husband was embarrassed, and he hates it when I tell that story, but it was hilarious. It was absolutely hilarious. And I say to him, why would you be embarrassed about that? That is how awesome of a dad that you are, that you took it so seriously, and we modeled the behavior, right? I married a great guy, a great, funny guy. So I think that is, above all, we've had lots of funny things happen, but I think above all, that was the funniest thing. But I would love to hear, it's Friday. Could we not all use a really good laugh? I know I could. So bring it on. Tell us what the funniest thing is that has happened in relation to autism in your life. Let's roll on the floor together laughing. We could really use it. All right, we always have a topic of the day. Our topic of the day for this entire week has been teaching functional communication. And I hope that if you've been watching, you really are getting the idea now that this has so many different levels to it, that we're talking about actual, I remember years ago when I'm somebody who has a really hard time with exercise, right? We've talked about this before. And I remember hearing somebody speak and saying, there's fitness and then there's functional fitness. That there are people who go to the gym and they, lift the weights and do whatever, but if they were going to go out and play with their kids on the, in the backyard on the lawn, it wouldn't necessarily, they would be out of breath and whatever. And the whole idea was to get you functionally fit so that it would help you in your life, which I loved that idea. I didn't stick around for it, but that's not my point. When we're teaching language, we don't want for the child just to be able to do reps, right? With language, that, they can say this sentence. We want it to be functional as it can be. Is that going to mean different things for different kids? You betcha. Is that going to mean different things for different adults? Absolutely. And I think that is mirrored in real life. All of our ability to communicate is different. We all have different skill level. When we're talking about our kids on the autism spectrum, sometimes the gap is that much huger. And sometimes it's devastating how much the gap is, the ability to communicate. And I know that there are some of you who are watching who say, I don't have the ability to communicate with my child. And I've heard you. I want you to know you are heard, that it is the biggest, hardest thing. We can talk about the tantrums and the challenging behavior and all of that, which is demoralizing and upsetting and tears at the very fabric of your lives and prevents you from being able to lead a happy, productive life. But you tell me resoundingly that when you can't communicate with your child, it transcends everything else. It's above everything else, because it's right at your very soul, that you have a child and you want to and need to communicate with them. I would tell you that I think that the two things are interrelated. That if your child doesn't have the ability to communicate with you, that you are going to have challenging behavior. How could you not? If we couldn't get our needs met, we would tantrum too, right? And if we teach functional communication skills, and by the way, the experts tell me, this is not from me, that everyone can be taught to have a level of functional communication skills. They're not all going to be the same, but a level of functional communication. That's when we see the challenging behavior decrease significantly. So important. I hope you guys are motivated to get through. It's not easy. There's nothing easy about it, but that you overcome it. You know, we heard Zev sitting here saying yesterday about The Amazing Race. I said, you know, weren't you scared? Weren't you nervous? I mean, you know that you have social things and you have things that bother you, things that are hard for you. Weren't you scared? And he said, no, because I really, really, really wanted to do this. And I know that looking at the show and seeing some of the things that he overcame because of his desire to do something bigger, we can find that for our kids and our teenagers and our adults as well. And when we find the thing that is truly reinforcing to them, they can move mountains. These are brave individuals. I have never met people who are harder working than people who are on the spectrum. The things that they have to do to be able to communicate with us, it's a lot of hard work. But when we find the thing that is motivating enough, they will communicate. And when we reinforce them with the things that they want, when they communicate, they will communicate more. It doesn't all look the same. Right? In some cases, we're talking about communicating through a device. In some cases, we're talking about a picture exchange system. In some cases, we're talking about speech. It's not all the same, but it's communication, and that's the core of everything, communication. Okay, so we're still going to be talking about that today, and to that end, some of what we're going to be talking about, we're going to have an academic tip coming up in just a few minutes. I don't know whether it's going to be on Monday or Tuesday of next week, but I have been hard at work at home putting together, because it's time for my son to go back to school. I know for some of you, your kids are going back to school too. We're going to share with you, we did it last year too, where I made a token economy for him to go to school. I'm going to be doing that again and sharing that with you guys right here in the studio. That'll probably be on Monday or Tuesday because school starts on Thursday, right? No sense waiting to the last minute, Shannon. Whew. But we're going to talk about some academic things because it's that time of the year. We'll take on a social skills tip. We are going to have research with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. We are attempting to be able to continue our interview about the surf and turf camp that we were talking about the other day. We had an opportunity to talk with Rupert Isaacson from Horseboy. They were the turf part of the surf and turf camp. We were trying to get Rocky Rayner on the phone with us that day to talk about the surfing aspect of the camp. We weren't able to get because of our technical difficulties. We're still trying for today, folks. So fingers crossed. I'm hoping we're going to be able to talk to Rocky later on this morning. Don't know if that's going to happen yet. But if it doesn't, we have a whole host of other things to talk about. And of course, your questions always take precedence. So fasten your seatbelt. We're on the road. We got a lot of stuff to talk about today. We're going to take a break. When we come back, it's time for the reading tip, the academic tip of the week. Stick with us. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Grandpichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some glasses?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. It's time for the academic tip of the week. We know that helping our kids to be successful in school is such a huge part of this journey, right? That when they go to school, there are a lot of different considerations, and we want to send them as prepared as we can possibly be and help to bolster up what's happening at school. By the way, as a former teacher, I just have to say, little disclaimer here, I think that's important for all parents, right? I think that not enough parents know that that is the expectation, especially with budget cuts and things going on at schools. We can't have the expectation that our kids are going to get it all at school. And I find it interesting and scary that enough people don't know that. So I just want to put that out there, that even if my child weren't on the spectrum, I would have an expectation that I would be working on things with him at home. But because my child is on the spectrum, I don't know about you, I feel it is that much more imperative, because he started out behind. And I know something that gets said here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders that lifts me up. There used to be a sign, and I don't know what happened to the sign, that said, catch your child up and never let your child fall behind again. And I really feel like it is a really important rally cry for all of us to get behind. Catch your child up and never let them fall behind again. Because by the time your child gets diagnosed, your child's behind. And there is that run to catch up. And I know we talk about this all the time, how important it is. We endlessly talk about early intervention because there's less to catch up, and that it's difficult. Those of you who write in and say, but my kid is 15. And I go, yeah, no, I know, I feel your frustration there, but you still got to get in the business of getting them caught up as quickly as you can, as much as you can. Okay, so what does that mean for us? If we're going to hope to get our kids caught up and never let them fall behind again, what kinds of things are we working on academically at home? Now, you guys know I love the skills program and that I use it at home. And one thing that I want to bring up is that the academic portion of the skills program is not meant to take the place of the curriculum at school. In fact, quite the opposite. It is meant to be that supplement, right? It's meant to be the thing to help bolster up, fill in the holes, get the child caught up, and not let them fall behind. So it is totally supplementary to what's happening at school. Goes over individual. If your child is having difficulty with a concept or some individual thing at school, then using the skills program, it'll take you back to the very stepstones to get to the point where they can do that skill, which is so important. And I want to take a little minute here to talk about reading. Excuse me, because obviously reading is a core skill for academics. And if we can get a child to read, and if we can get a child to enjoy the adventure of reading, I think we all understand that there are no limits to what they can do, right? But it's a really important stepping stone, and for some of our kids, it is not difficult. We see that some of our kids are hyperlexic, that they read at an incredibly early age. That is by no means all of our children. So if you've got a 6-year-old who's struggling with reading, don't think to yourself, what does this mean? You know, but I'm just saying that it isn't the case for all of our kids, that there is a difficulty there. Some of them, you know, because they've had a deficit in other communication, being able to decode and figure out textual prompts is a relief for them. It's an absolute relief. Okay, but for the kids that is not the case, who are struggling to be able to identify letters and to be able to decode, what are the things that we can do to help them? Now, I will tell you that there are a whole host of lessons in this skills program. I don't know what my issue is. I got a total frog in my throat. Excuse me. But there are a whole host of lessons in the skills program that can help, and you take the assessment first to see where your child's at, so it helps you to pinpoint a jumping in point where it really is productive to start teaching from. But you know, there is all of that, and I really encourage you that if your child's having some difficulties with that you take a look at those lessons on skills. You can go to skillsglobal.com. They have a free trial that you can do and take a look at the program. And I'm going to be talking about it again when I talk about the IEP. I really think you should take a look at skills. I think it's life-changing, you guys. And to me, it's life-changing whether you already have ABA in place or you've never done ABA in place. I think it goes across the board. So, but, you know, I love it, and we know that I love it, so I don't want to belabor that. But in any case, I think that it's additionally important that we set up circumstances, and it will help you to do this in the skills program too, for these individual lessons on decoding and phonics and all of those things. But I think that taking the actual time that you spend on reading and increase it, and that you find a way to make it the most deeply pleasurable part of the day. That if you've focused on some other things, right? If you've been able to get enough functional communication skills, that you've had some challenging behavior decrease, and you're starting to be able to have that functional communication with your child, really good time to institute a time of the day when you sit with your child and you read, and you take the opportunity to have that be this really spectacular, joyous, safe, happy, enriching, nurturing moment with your child. Is that going to look different with different children? It should. It absolutely should. When I think about the 3 people that we had in the studio this week, Carrie Magro, Danny Bowman, and Zev, from The Amazing Race and think about them when they were children and the expectation that all three of them would have enjoyed the same book or the same method to be read to, it would be preposterous, right? We'd be like, no way. So I'd never want to make it sound like, oh, well, I do this with my son, so this is the thing to do. Not at all. I think you got to look at your individual child and say, what is really reinforcing to this child? What is very exciting to them? So what kind of book? Early on, I mentioned the other day that my son loved cartoons, but they had to be black and white. And that only started when he was just after 3. Before that, he didn't want to watch cartoons. He didn't like cartoons at all. He liked to watch real people. And the cartoon thing just didn't make sense to him. And then when he did start to like cartoons, he didn't like it really colorful. It was too much for him sensory, but he loved watching old black and white cartoons. Different things for different kids. So stop and consider, what is your child drawn to? If your child is all about Toy Story and all about Buzz Lightyear, then maybe, that's the set of books that you get Buzz Lightyear books. And they have the little characters and they can be sitting there and holding their Buzz Lightyear while they're reading, and that you take the opportunity to interact always with your child. Interact. You do not have to teach reading, and you do not have to be somebody who understands how to teach reading or how to understand decoding to have it be a productive thing where your child begins to understand what words mean and that a word means something. One of the things that there's a line of books called Usborne, and one of the things that is very clever that they do is that they have a little duck on there's a little, it's sort of like, who was the guy that they're always looking for? Waldo. Where's Waldo? Those can also be really great books for some kids. Some kids get overwhelmed by them. But the duck on the page is this thing where on every page, they're the very cartoony books, the little duck is hidden, and it kind of helps to keep the child's focus so that you turn the page and you say to the child, where's the duck? Now, is that going to be perfect for all children? No, because some children are just going to perseverate on the duck and not pay attention to what else is happening on the page, right? So different things for different kids. And I will tell you that, as much as the Usborne books are great and the duck is on the page, and it's not in all of their books, I don't think, it's just in some of them. You have to ask for it. You have the ability to do that with every single book that you have on the shelf. Every single book. I love the Dr. Seuss books because there's an element of rhyming to it, and I think it helps for children to be able to do that, recognize phonemes. It's actually very good for receptive language. But when you're sitting and reading a Dr. Seuss book with a child, let's say that you're reading Green Eggs and Ham, and they're saying, I would not eat them on a train. And you're sitting there, and whether it's after bath time and they're all snuggly and fresh jammies, if that's what's reinforcing to the child, if the bath is horrific and aversive, maybe not, right? Individual. But you're sitting there with a child, you've set up the circumstances so that the child is as happy as you can potentially make them, and you're going through the book and it says, I would not eat them on a boat. And you look at the child and say, where's the boat? And this very, excited, where's the boat? And you may have to prompt and have them touch the boat and go, there's the boat, yay, right? Depending on if the hug and the, yay is reinforcing to the child. But you're pointing things out in the book. And then on every page, as you're reading, you read what's on the page and you say, where's the fish? And the child points. And then eventually you say, where's the blue fish? And the child points to the blue fish. And you're reinforcing that and saying, good job. This is the beginning of pre-reading. It has to be interactive. It's one of those things that I like to sit and read for parents and show them how much fun it can be and how interactive it can be. You're working on joint attention. It's actually pathways, building the pathways to associating with that they see, if you say to them, there's one fish, one blue fish, and you say, where's the fish? Over time, an opportunity, there is the possibility that the child will begin to associate that F-I-S-H with the fish. And that's the beginning of decoding. And you don't have to get a degree in early child development or a reading specialist certificate certificate to be able to do that kind of thing. And it works on social interaction and attention, but make it reinforcing. As much as possible, make it reinforcing. You know, we were told early on by our school that it was so important that we read with our child a half an hour a day. And I can tell you that when he was 2.5 and we were in the autism moments of, you know, this is a child who's throwing himself on the floor and beating his head against the floor, I was saying, how do you read for a half an hour with this child? But we did not give up. And I've said before that the secret for us, bizarre, was for him to hold a cold apple. I don't know why, but he held that apple and he could be still and listen. And over time, the apple, we didn't use the apple anymore, but that was, to this day, I cannot tell you why that was so reinforcing to him, but it was like magic. And I'm so lucky and grateful that we found that, but I will tell you, don't stop looking. We tried a bunch of different things, and then that worked. But never give up. Reading is so essential and important for our kids. Make it reinforcing. Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we have our IEP tip of the week, so stick with us.
We were supporting children with ASD and their families and providing mainly home-based intervention. But then what we noticed is that many of our families struggled with finding an appropriate preschool for their children. So we thought, why not start our own? And what it is it's a program for typically developing children. And we have 30 children in the program, but we reserve 8 spots for children with ASD. And our typical kids attend full-time, Monday to Friday, but our children with ASD attend part day, so 4 hours, 5 days a week, and receive all their intervention in a classroom-based setting. Well, what are some characteristics of teachers that, you know, a good match with inclusive classroom? And we selected teachers who are flexible in their philosophy, who understand and are in agreement that not all children learn in the same way, and that they need to adjust their teaching style to match their learning needs. So once we selected our teachers, then the training process started. We've seen great results with our teachers. What we saw is that they developed a great interest in learners with ASD and in applied behavior analysis altogether. They came from different backgrounds, early childhood education. They weren't exposed to those teaching techniques, but they quickly realized that those techniques work.
I would imagine that you're seeing some pluses for both the neurotypical kids and the children on the autism spectrum.
So far, what we've seen, because we did have our graduates and they did transition to kindergartens, it really depends on how good of a job the school does maintaining their skills that we teach them. And we had situations where it did work great, and we work collaboratively with the school, and they are able to maintain and continue the teaching that we've started.
Welcome back. We're showing you some of these interviews that we did at ABAI, ABA International. We met such a wonderful array of people there, knowledgeable people, and I'm thrilled that we're having the opportunity to be able to show you that there are BCBAs all over the place. And you find them in the darndest places. And I hope that you're starting to get the scope of how many people are out there and how much knowledge and information, so that you'll feel motivated to step into this circle of saying, okay, if I could talk to anybody and if I could find out more information about, or if I'd like to know about what kind of studies have done, what's the most effective way to teach shoe tying, you know, what do the studies say? It's very exciting to me now. I used to think that the research was someplace really far away that had nothing to do with me and my child. And I'm seeing that is not the case. And these people are very approachable. They love, in fact, to talk to you about their research. It's very jargon intensive, I'm sure, as you've noticed. But they get very excited about being able to share the information with somebody who can use it. That's you. And I just want to be somebody somebody who's in the middle going, hey, you guys should talk to each other, right? Hook up. You know how when you go to a party, you got two friends that should know each other and they haven't had an opportunity, and you just go, you two should talk. You have a lot in common. You have a lot that you'd be excited about to share with each other. It'd be great. That's who I want to be at this party, the person who goes, come on, you guys talk. Okay, it is time for the IEP tip of the week. And I mentioned earlier, jargon land, the IEP is the individualized education plan or program that your child is entitled to in the United States. Under federal legislation, there are laws in place that if your child has documented difficulties, lacks of skills, diagnosis, that they are entitled to an individualized education plan. There is an IEP team that gets together and makes a document that is a legally bound document in terms of that what's on there everybody has to uphold. And if they don't, they are in violation of the law. So a very important document. I think that parents hear that and they go, you know, I got to make sure that the right things are in that document. I think that's a very realistic, anxiety-ridden thing. As a former teacher, anytime I have an IEP meeting, it's an anxiety-ridden thing to me because, you know, it's a moment where we're going to make decisions that are going to be in place, and I want to know that they're effective. I'd like to start to make a shift for parents to not be as afraid to go into an IEP meeting, but to look at it and go, oh, I get to go to an IEP meeting. I get to go in and be a part of a team where we decide the plan of how we're going to help my child. I'm on a movement. Everybody stand back. I got a mission here. I really think that's what the IEP needs to get to. It's not there yet for most of us, but that's where we need to go. There are so many things that on this journey, when I think back to where we started and the pioneers, those of you who have been in this so much longer than I have ever been, and that you guys would say, look, I wanted to leave it better than I found it, the world of autism, and here's what we did. And I continue to have so much respect for what the early pioneers of autism did. And I really took it to heart and said, you know, I would like to leave the world of autism differently than I found it. And there are a lot of things that I want to change, that I want to see happen. You know, I want the playing field leveled so that all kids have access to ABA. I don't care where you live, how much money you do or do not have, and the bank account that you do or do not have. I want for your child to have access to ABA, right? I think everybody should be on that page now. And if not, we'll just keep pushing that because I want everybody to have access. If you absolutely decide that you don't want to do it, you know, then I don't know. But every child should have access. No parent should be told, you know, there is this ABA thing that could be helpful for your child, but, you know, you don't have enough money to afford it. We need to get there. But we also need to get to a point where everybody who is at school is trained in behavioral techniques so that they're comfortable and that our children are safe and being taught in a way that is proper and efficient and productive. And I really want to see the day when parents can go in and be thrilled to sit down at the IEP meeting and feel the relief of, great, because now I'm going to be here and my child is going to get more help than we were getting before this meeting. Help that is specific to this child. That's what an IEP should be. That's where we have to get to go. I feel like there's a lot that needs to happen on the school side for that to happen, and that training people will help to do that. But we don't have control of that today. Here's what we do have control of, though, from the parent side. And I know we have teachers that are watching, and I know you guys are frustrated with the process too, because you know you're trying to get to it, but you see the stress that happens at IEP meeting. Believe me, I understand that you know, teachers are in the middle, right? They really, I think the vast majority of teachers really want to help the child. They see that it's adversarial for the parents and they're disappointed in that process. And I think that there are many administrative people who want to be a positive force, but not all of them. I'm just going to say that. from what you guys tell me and what I have experienced myself on occasion. Let's say that quietly. In any case, how can we get parents to feel more empowered at that IEP meeting so that the sheer trepidation that you feel going into the meeting is not there? And I think that part of it is being truly prepared, not some ridiculous thing. The first time that my son had an IEP where I was sitting on the other side of the table, I had been on the other side of the table as a teacher, and it's so different on the other side. It's so different on the other side. And the first time that I went in, I was like, oh my gosh, they're going to write goals for him, and I don't know what they're going to write, and I need to have goals. I don't know what goals to have for a 3-year-old with autism who's not speaking. Where are these goals written down? Where would I find the goals that are appropriate for my child and help with wording them? Because I'd never had to write an IEP before. That didn't exist, because believe me, I looked for it. It didn't exist when my son was 3 years old, and I put together, someday I'm going to bring it in, it's this ridiculous book that I put together with all of the preschool standards from like 5 different states with things highlighted and little, tabs that were different color coded and, all of this stuff. And then I went into the meeting and they were saying, well, this is IEP goal number 1, here's the benchmark, and it had nothing to do with the book that I brought in. Complete and total utter waste of my time. And I don't know, I disagreed with what they had on the paper. I did not think that their goals were appropriate, but I'll be honest with you, I don't know that my goals were any more appropriate than theirs were. But what I can tell you is you don't have to do that. You don't have to go through that, because that thing that I was looking for, a place where I could go and say, what are appropriate goals for my 3-year-old who is nonverbal, who has autism, this individual child who is not the same as this other child who's 3 years old and nonverbal with autism, because that child has this skill that my child doesn't have, and my child has this skill that that child doesn't have. And so where can I find the appropriate goals for this child at the age of 3, and the language in which to put it, so that I can go into the meeting and say, here are the things. It exists. It didn't then, it exists now. That's absolutely one of the byproducts of skills, that after you go in and take the assessment and you answer the questions about your child, it gives you a pool of lessons, and you can pick and choose which ones you want, but they're appropriate for your child at your child's skill level, their age level. They're totally appropriate. And not only that, with each one of the lessons, as you go through and pick and say, yes, this one is really important to me right now. This one's more important than that one to me right now. Because sometimes, like if your child does not have language skills, their ability to garden, not as important to you as being able to put together a 3-word request, right? So a lot of it's just common sense about how you want to prioritize. With each lesson, there's IEP language, and all you have to do is fill in the dates and who you want to be responsible for it. And you can generate, and push a button and it spits out your IEP goals, so that you can go in and say, here are the 10 goals that I think are appropriate for my child, and trust that they are appropriate for your child, and that you already have it in the language, and know that you have come in and that you have a real say for the first time at the meeting about what happens, that you are not just wasting people's time, that you have a substantive contribution to the IEP that I think could actually be helpful to the staff who does not know your child as well, and they've assessed your child in a short period of time, but you've done a much more extensive assessment, and that you really can be a player at the table now. And I know, had I had that, because I know I go into meetings now and I don't have to have that fear anymore. Yeah, I'm a veteran at it now. But I know that I'm going in, and that I know that we are in the neighborhood of talking about what is actually beneficial. I will tell you that for me, since we've been able to use skills, the thing that was still more difficult for me was the whole behavior intervention plan, and feeling like I was not an equal player there at devising the behavior intervention plan. But we mentioned a couple of weeks ago that there is now that element in skills that you can get to too, that the behavior builder is what it's called. It's called Behavior Champ, but on your skills you'll see it's the behavior builder on the side panel that you can go to, that it levels the playing field for the parent there as well, that you can go to the table and not only be an effective member of the team, because the behavior builder you can customize it, but it reminds you if you're about to leave something out. I think you can probably be one of the most effective people at the table. And that's exciting, to be able to go to an IEP and to know that a parent doesn't have to go and get a degree in something, to go in and be able to present what you need in the language that it needs to be in, and have it be backed up by science and research and make total sense and be appropriate to your individual child, is sweet. Sweet, sweet. So I want, hopefully you guys know this is why I love Skills so much. You can go to Skills Global, like I said, get a trial. It's life-changing, empowering, life-changing, and empowering for the parent, but then when it actually trickles down to the child, big stuff. Big, big, big stuff. All right, so that's our IEP tip for the week. Know your IEP goals, and I don't know of any other way to do it than Skills. So that's that fast and efficient. Okay, it is time, and we're late. It's time for the A word. This is that lovely documentary that's being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. They're following Jack Riley. He is a 3-year-old little boy now. He was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He's been getting therapy for about 8 months where we are in the series, and we've seen Jack Riley work on a series of different things. His progress has been amazing, and there's more progress to be made. This week, they're working on toileting. Wow, big stuff. So take a look. This is the A word.
I know a cute little blue-eyed boy, and his name is Jack.
Jack Riley.
He got a big, warm, blue-eyed soul that makes your heart beat fast.
This is day 3 of potty training. Well, we think he's learning to pee on the potty. No big successes yet, and lots of accidents. Here is the laundry from today.
Ready?
25 weeks ago, Jack Riley had a huge breakdown when Jessica asked him to sit down, a direction that's usually very easy for him to do. At the time, no one knew he had to go potty. He didn't have the language to tell his parents or Jessica that he needed time.
Jack, what are you doing?
Pooping.
You're pooping? Oh, okay.
Jump to 4 weeks ago, and you can see he is now able to communicate what he needs when a demand is placed on him, instead of tantruming like he did before when he didn't have language.
Pooping your diapers.
Okay. How do you know when a kid's ready for potty training?
So a couple of prerequisites to know when a kiddo is ready is they wake up dry in their pull-up or diaper. And when they actually do go in their pull-up or diaper, like during the day when they're awake, they let you know that they went number 1 or number 2, depending on what it is.
It's like you have no choice but to pee.
Let's do it. Help.
No, I can't help you pee.
Help.
I can hold your hand, but I can't help you pee.
So the purpose of the potty log is just to see how long it takes them as soon as they sit on the potty for them to actually urinate, and the amount of time that he's able to hold his urine. And with the log, we're able to visually see how long it takes them each time, and if they have accidents or not. He's on a half-hour potty schedule, so if he doesn't go when we take him, then we have to take him in 10 more minutes. So every 10-minute intervals until he does go, and then we reset the clock, and it's 30 minutes again.
Okay, buddy. Okay, last chance to go pee-pees. Do we reset it for 10?
Oh, what does that mean? What does that mean, Jack? It's potty time! We can come play after. Hurry!
Uh-oh, he wet himself.
Oh. We can reset to half an hour now.
To make sure Jack Riley uses the potty regularly, they have been giving him lots of fluids and salty foods.
There it is. Let's go. All right, let's go. What do you have to do? You have to put your pee-pee in the potty. Okay, give it a shot. See if you can put it in there. There you go. You're doing it. Yay, Jack.
Big prayer for your pee-pee.
Big prayer for your pee-pee.
Woo!
Welcome back. That was the A word. And we have that lovely moment of the cheering. And I know, like, what other show would we be talking about peeing in the potty and everybody going yay? This is our lives. I make no apologies because it's life-changing. And anybody who doesn't get it, I'm so sorry. But, you know, when a child is able to get to the point where they're doing that, we have to reinforce it. It's a party. And you know what? It is a celebration. You know, I think it is akin to a college graduation because it's a huge, huge moment. Whether a child is able to be the commander of what happens to their body makes a huge difference in the kinds of things that they're going to do with their life. And, you know, while we are used to not taking it for granted, because I think there comes a moment when you go, oh, you know, we've all heard the stories of individuals on the autism spectrum who do not have this ability, right? But I do have to say, and we've heard this time and time again from our experts who say that while, you know, there are some cases that are harder than others, it is possible to potty train all of our kids on the spectrum, with the possible exception is if somebody has a medical issue that is separate and unique from the autism, which is not the norm. But I'm sure that there are some cases, you know, really extreme cases where there's a medical condition, but that even when children have a dual diagnosis, potty training is something that is not only possible, it is like run-of-the-mill possible. It takes some time, it takes some effort, it takes some behavior modification on everyone's part, not just the child. Right? We all got to change our behavior to a certain extent in order to get to that moment with the yay, you did it, and to upkeep it, right? We have to make it worth their while. We have to. That's what works. We know from science that that's what works. So if you have a child who has not yet been potty trained, I really want to encourage you to get some help, some actual, like, real support from somebody who is specifically trained in this. We've done lots of shows about the basics, but if you're struggling, don't struggle. Don't make this a battle zone, because it really needs to be something that is as reinforcing as what we just saw with Jack Riley. But when we do that, it is totally possible. We're going to take a short break, then we're going to come back and do the question of the day, and I am told that we are going to be joined by Rocky Rayner via Skype at 10:20. So we're trying to fit a lot of things in here tight before that time, and I do want to get to the question of the day to see what the funniest thing is that's happened to you on your autism journey. So stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free, all provided.
Which is wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you know, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back. Well, I'm having computer problems, so I'm not able to access your answers to the question of the day at this moment in time, although they're working on getting those to me. But I want to take a second to talk about what you just saw with Home Depot. You know, last weekend was the Home Depot weekend, and they built the chalkboards, their bulletin boards. And we were able to go by. We weren't able to stay day of, but they were able to give us so that we have it and that we could work on it at home. And I just want to remind all of you of this wonderful opportunity. We won't have it again until the first week in September, but I think it's a really good thing to, if you're an autism parent, to get yourself a big calendar. We had one for a while that was just this big, and I heard tell of a parent who had one that was like 8 feet wide and that did the monthly calendar. And I know parents that did, you know, the dry erase board calendars. I think whatever it is, and I know other people that keep it online or on their phone or whatever, find what works best for you, because it has to be reinforcing for you to keep a calendar. But look, this thing is a scheduling nightmare, autism. You know, because you can't do it by yourself. I hope we all know that, right? I thought that I should have been able to do it by myself, and it became abundantly clear to me that there was no way I was really, truly going to help my child if it was just me and just my husband. We had to trust other people, and that we had to figure out a way to schedule. I've said before that if the project managers of autism, because every family has the autism project manager, if those people were to get in a room, we could change the world, because we could schedule anything for anybody and take into consideration a lot of amazing different things. But I really encourage you to start keeping some sort of a family calendar. By the way, you know, hopefully you're getting ABA, and hopefully you have other people on your team, whether it's your ABA provider or it's that you put together a team. But it's really going to become important for you to keep track of your insurance company or whoever your funding source is, and heaven help you if you are your own funding source. You know, doesn't matter who it is, you're going to want to keep track of what actually happens, so that on that day when a therapist calls and says, I'm sorry, I can't make it, my car just broke down, you know, that you mark down that therapy didn't happen. And it's really up to us as parents. Somebody in the family has to be the project manager and has to keep the schedule. So you want to make a schedule and write down who came on what day, what hours they were there. Super duper important to write down if they, you know, didn't stay the whole time, if somebody got sick and left, to write it down, because you're going to want to keep track of. It's going to be important as you continue to have services. It's part of tracking what's happening. It makes a difference directly to your child. But since you're going to keep that schedule, right, and you got to know, well, this person is coming on Tuesday at 10 o'clock, and I have the OT appointment on Thursday at 3 o'clock, so that when somebody calls and says, you know, you have your dentist appointment coming up at 2 o'clock on Wednesday, you know, that you've got a place where all this is sorted out and that you can look at it quickly and not have a nervous breakdown. So really important that you have some sort of schedule. And what a great place, once you have that schedule, to write down on the first Saturday of every month that you have an opportunity. You don't have to go, but you have an opportunity that's free, that's this beautiful, beautiful natural environment, social training moment with fine motor skills involved that has the potential to be very reinforcing for your child. And that is the Home Depot Kids Workshop. It happens on the first Saturday of every month. I just love that Home Depot provides this service for our kids. I think it's very smart of them, I will say, because I know whenever I go, I end up spending some money there. You don't have to, it's not required, but I go, you know, I could really use something. And so I buy something. Okay, they're telling me that I have the responses of the day. But in any case, I want you guys to know that the Home Depot thing is a wonderful thing to be able to do with your children. They're very welcoming and accepting and fabulous, and so I hope you'll take part. I want to get to some of these questions of the day, and maybe after our interview with Rocky Rayner, we'll be able to come back to a few more of them, because the question of the day was, what's the funniest thing that has happened to you on your journey through autism? So somebody wrote in and said, first day with a child after 8 years as a therapist, and she says, the person says, me, so he's not really one for scripting. The mom swallows and says, you think. 2 years of scripting behavior to follow. LOL, LOL, you never know, even when you think you know. So I think, if I'm following this correctly, that the assumption was that the little guy wasn't going to be able to do something, and then clearly was. And that you don't know with our kids. You really don't know. I have gotten very adept at saying the words, I don't know. Early on this journey, doctors would say to me, well, you know, can he do this? Does he know this? And now, you know, when people ask me those questions, for a lot of those questions, I can say yes. But when anything is outside of what I know, I don't say no, he can't do it. I say, I don't know. The first moment that I remember thinking, oh my gosh, maybe I don't know, was literally on his 3rd birthday. It was his last day of speech therapy because the services were being stopped while we were waiting for ABA. And she was giving him an assessment and asking him all of these things to see what he understood receptively. And my child was, you know. And then she flipped a page, and like she would say things like, point to the one that, point to the fish, right? And my son, you know, looking around, and he didn't point to the fish, right? And she would say, you know, point to the pan, and, you know, right? Looking around. Then she flipped the page, and I think she was feeling like, okay, well, this is ridiculous, but I still have to ask these questions. And she said, okay, so point to the one, and it's the same pictures, right? And she says, point to the one that swims in the ocean. He points to the fish. Like, what happened? And she says, point to the one that you use to cook bacon. And in my head, I'm thinking, my kid doesn't eat bacon. He doesn't know what bacon is. Points to the pan. And I went, wait. And she kind of perked up and was like, okay. And she goes, and she saw my excitement, and she was like, I think it's a coincidence. I was like, that's not a coincidence. Come on, right? And so she did like 2 more, and he got them right. And she said, I don't want you to get your hopes up. I don't know what happened, but I don't want to get your hopes up. And I was like, yeah, good luck. My hopes are up. My kid understood. He doesn't understand the labels, but he understood the functions. Swiss cheese, he's got the skill that's way over here. He doesn't have the beginning skill. We fill in the beginning skill, and where's my child going to go, which is exactly what happened. In any case, we can't assume, right? We can never, ever assume. Okay, another person who wrote in that volunteering at an ABA preschool, a new undergrad turns and says, while looking at my daughter, you know, she is so cute, but I don't think they ever comb her hair, not knowing that I was the mom. Oh my gosh. I had stopped because they were, I had stopped combing her hair because they were working on a sensory program for this at school. A few minutes later, their child, out of the blue, came up to me and gave me a kiss and said, "Love, Mama." And the undergrad grabbed her iPhone, keys, and left. The poor girl got failed the class credit for leaving, when if she had waited a second, I would have laughed it off. Not as funny now, but the look on her face was priceless. Oh my gosh. Oh, how embarrassing is that? Oh, people say the darndest thing. All right, I'm going to come back to some of these because we're already past time and I want to get Rocky on the phone with us, but I want to read these in depth. Okay, we're going to take a really brief break. Hopefully, keep your fingers crossed, technicalities. Hopefully, when we come back, we're going to be joined by Rocky Rayner, and he is part of the Half Moon Bay Surf Club that was involved in the recent surf and turf camp that we were talking about the other day, where they took kids riding on horseback and surfing in the ocean. So stick with us.
C-15. Flying Taxi San Francisco events.
This week actually started probably about a year and a half ago, and Rocky Rayner and I were talking about a way that we could use the expertise that Jack has, combining it with the surf team here in Half Moon Bay. So this week has really been quite a collaboration between the surf team, Indo-Jack Surf Charities, Square Pegs, and then the Horseboy Foundation. And being able to bring it all together in one place and try something new of combining the horse riding with the surfing has just been an incredible experience for all the people involved.
It's just too heavy for Superman to live.
We are in Half Moon Bay, California, and we're putting on a charity surf camp in conjunction with the Half Moon Bay Surf Club, with the Square Peg Foundation and the Horseboy, putting together kind of a new program using horses and surfing to connect with special needs kids, namely autism. And so Indo-Jack Surf Charities came out here to sort of run the surf portion of the program and to train the Half Moon Bay Surf Club to do this in the future on their own.
To see the autistic program come here to Half Moon Bay and to get these kids in the water and to get the surf club involved was just an amazing vibe at the beach.
I was so surprised we were able to get them all into wetsuits. That was just amazing, because that was the thing I thought we were going to have the most difficulty with. And then when they got in the wetsuits and they got on the water, it was easy. They just all wanted to surf.
So I'm Rupert Isaacson. I'm the founder and director of the Horseboy Foundation. And I work with autistic people and horses. We're doing our first horse and surf camp today. Over the next couple of days, and this is the first time I've ever gone surfing in my life, but I can really see why people have been using surfing as a therapy for autism. It's very, very, very similar to the effect of the horse. You've got this giant movement underneath you, you've got the magic of the living thing, either the horse or the ocean, you've got the sense of adventure, you have to get over a certain slight fear and discomfort, which then of course boosts your self-confidence. And I've been watching kids out there today who are struggling verbally, who are struggling sensorily. I can see that all the sensory stuff calms down because the movement of the ocean is very similar to the horse. And I've been seeing kids that are barely verbal using complex language, really their intellect really coming to the fore, and all that white noise in the head and all that physical discomfort that a lot of them go through neurologically is being calmed down by the ocean in a very similar way to the way you find it with the horse. I totally see the benefits for kids. I'm an autism dad. My son had an amazing experience out there. He even had a wipeout and had a bad reaction, had to get over it and find his courage again and go out, and he did, and he feels fantastic about it.
The autistic kids, you think they can't do anything, but they were having loads of fun.
using surfing on the surface with kids with physical and mental challenges might seem a little lightweight. You know, people might question, well, what are you doing? You're not curing anything, you're not fixing anything. But what I've learned, and what you'll all learn as you view this, is that there's an element of surfing that helps a child realize that getting knocked down, they can get back up. There's one email that came in this week, the day after we finished, and it was, this was the best day of his life. And if that was all we gave them to give one child the best day of their life, that's worth it.
Welcome back to Autism Live. It's been a really interesting, bumpy ride, but we finally have Rocky Rayner joining us via Skype. He is from the Half Moon Bay Surf Club. Rocky, thank you so much for being with us. I have to ask you before we start if we can have your permission to be showing your image and to be videotaping you here on Autism Live.
Yes, you do.
Okay,
you have my permission.
Great. So thank you. You guys don't know, but the other day when we had Rupert Isaacson on from Horseboy, it was our intention to also have Rocky on the phone with us, and we were having a huge, I guess the entire world was, technical difficulty, and poor Rocky was calling, and we were calling Rocky, and we couldn't ever connect. It was tragic is what it was, but I believe that it all worked out for the best, because now we get to have picture of you as well, and we'll talk about the surf aspect of this camp. So for those of you who didn't see the other show, they did a surf and turf camp with the Half Moon Bay Surf Club and Horseboy. So a group of kids who are on the autism spectrum got to go horseback riding and surfing as part of the whole camp. And we just saw the pictures. What was it like, Rocky?
Oh, it's a great experience for me and for the Half Moon Bay Surf Club. We had 18 surf club members ranging from the age of 10 to 16. Mm-hmm. Some of the parents were concerned when they showed up and saw how young our surfers were. But at the end of the day, they were all coming up saying what a great bunch of kids and how much fun our children had, because our kids actually played with the autism spectrum kids the whole time, and so it was like a big fun day. The amazing part of all this, I think I said it in the tape, is we got all 8 of the kids in wetsuits, the autism kids, and we got all 8 on surfboards riding waves. And that was unbelievable.
I just got chills.
And we had such a good time. It was a great day.
Now you said, as we were watching the clip here coming into it, you said that the swords were a part of the entire, and I had seen the swords, but you said it was really a big part of the day. Tell us, like, whose idea was it to bring in the swords and what they did for the day?
Horseboy brought the swords, and we didn't understand why they brought the swords, but the kids all started playing with the swords on the beach. So our surfers picked up the swords and started playing with the kids and took them out in the water. So the kids all went out in the water with the swords, having sword fights. So that was how we got several of the kids on surfboards. And what we did is we had sword fights while they were riding on the surfboards, standing on the surfboards. One of our surfers were holding them on the surfboards, and we were having sword fights as they were riding waves. And so all the kids on the beach, the other kids that were on the beach, wanted to be part of that. So that's how we got 7 of the 8 in the water playing swords on surfboards. And our surfers had just as much fun as the 7 autistic kids playing swords on surfboards.
It's kind of amazing.
That may be part of our practices.
I just thought it was like, something that, at the end that you handed them swords and whatever, but that it really helped to bridge the gap, that it really helped to get them in the water. It's amazing.
It was really a lot of fun.
I was mentioning to Rocky before that my son has had the opportunity to participate in surfing when he was just 5. He got to do just a one-day thing with a group of other kids that were on the autism spectrum, and we were all excited about it. I was scared to death, and it was, I said, I don't know how they didn't put me in the hospital. Both my husband and I were going to videotape, and it was a whole thing about waiting until his turn. And then two complete and total strangers came up to the beach and walked away with my child, walked into the beach with him. And there was that moment when I realized I just let two strangers walk into the ocean with my child, who is largely nonverbal still at this point, and I had a panic attack. I literally, there's videotape of me, and I couldn't see where they went in the ocean. I completely freaked out. He had a great time, and I have no videotape of it because I couldn't find him in the ocean because I was having a panic attack. He had a great time, but they finally came back in with him about a half an hour later, and he came up to me, and this was a child who had not really put together a whole sentence, and he said, "Mommy, I not die, sharks not get me." And we had never heard him put two sentences like that together before, and I had no idea that he was afraid that a shark was going to get him. So there had been no prep for that, but it was amazing, and the amount that he talked the rest of that day, and of course once you prime that pump and get it going, he continued to talk more. There is something about having so much excitement happening that sometimes awakens their need to communicate. Did you guys experience that with these kids?
We did. We had two nonverbal kids that were with us, and afterwards they were talking. They were laughing, saying great, saying swords, saying surfing, and these kids were nonverbal, and the parents gave us all big hugs and high fives and thanked us so much. Well, I'll tell you one story. We had one nonverbal kid who was the second one in the water who actually caught waves, and I didn't realize he was nonverbal, and his mom, because I'm trying to communicate with him, he's trying to talk to me, and she says he can't talk, and I said, okay, smile if you had a good time, and he gave me the biggest smile and the biggest hug, and so I said, will you do this again? And he gave me a big smile, and all day, for the rest of the day, he had fun playing on the beach and interacting with his mom, and it was a great day for him. I know.
Wow.
In fact, I got an email from his mom telling us that it was the greatest day of his life, and to me that brought tears to my eyes.
Yeah.
And it was great. It was really great.
Something that we talk about on this show all the time is that when we find something that is reinforcing enough, that's rewarding enough for kids, they will overcome things that are hard for them. And I think where you guys, I don't want anybody to think that it's like some sort of, that you think you're waving a magic wand, but that it's so exciting and that it's so rewarding for the kids that they will overcome things that have been difficult for them. It's not run-of-the-mill what you do. You're a surfer. Describe the kinds of things that you feel on the board and why it's so exciting to you.
I have several boys. I have 4 boys, and my 20-year-old, he and I were going to the airport yesterday, and we were talking a little bit about this, and he said, you know what it is, surfing is addictive, and it is like a drug. Once you start surfing, there's something that happens inside you, and I've been surfing since I was in the 6th grade. I hate to tell you how old I am now, in my 60s anyway, and it's still the same way. Every time I paddle out, get into the lineup to go surfing, it is always, I get this wonderful calming feeling and a complete satisfaction. And I think that's what these kids feel when they get in the water, get on the surfboard, the motion. Rupert can talk about this more than I can, but it is definitely a calming. They absolutely calm down. They don't have the shakes. They don't have the banging of their hands, the rocking of their heads. They don't have any of that. It's all about the fun of being on the surfboard. So
it's absolutely amazing.
Yeah,
I
think it's surfing.
Was this the first time that you had an opportunity to work with the autism population, or had you been doing other stuff like that with your surf club?
No, this is our first one. The surf club had done at-risk kids that are at risk for drugs and abuse and gangs. We've done one, and we're doing another one on the 18th. But this autism one was so great, and the kids just loved it. The surf team kids, when we were done, I had them all in a circle. I thanked them all for coming. coming, and they said, no, thank you. This was the greatest experience of our lives. When are we going to do it again? So there's 44 kids in the surf club. 16 showed up for this one. A lot of them are on vacation and doing other things. I'm almost sure we'll have closer to the 40 for the next surf club because they're all talking about it. And what a great experience it is.
Well, that's really incredible. And so when are you thinking of doing another one?
It'll be the last week of August. I think it'll be the Tuesday. I'm sorry, I don't have a calendar right in front of me, but I think it's the Tuesday of the last week of August is when we're going to do the next one. We got a sponsor right away. We got phone calls from all over. Once we did this and this video that you showed went out, people started coming in saying, what do you need to do this again? So we told them, and we've got a sponsor now. So I think we're way to go. We're on our way.
Who's your sponsor? We want to plug them because I think this is amazing.
Elizabeth, I'm sorry, I don't know their names.
No, okay. All right. Well, you know what? I'll tell you what. You'll email me and tell me, and we'll make sure that we tell our viewers, because I love it when people see something like this and it motivates them and say, okay, I want to in some way contribute. And
it's a small grocery store in the Bay Area.
Okay. Well, let us know, and we will make sure that we plug them. I know you've got a lot of things going on, and this was very kind of last minute today when we got our system to be up and working. But I'm so thrilled that you're doing this. And one of the things that Rupert mentioned was that, are you still with us? Did you lose me?
I lost you.
Oh, okay. You got me now?
Yeah, I got you now.
Okay. One of the things that Rupert mentioned is that this isn't just dealing with a child who's on the spectrum, that the camp is really helping the entire family. So did the whole family get to go surfing as well?
Some of them did. Most of them were just in awe of what the kids had done, and they weren't prepared to go surfing. They were just probably a lot like you, scared to death that their child was going to drown, and especially in the hands of all these kids instead of adults. No, there were plenty of adults there too, but the kids took over. But I think that they were more in shock because they didn't know either, because this isn't on their bucket list for their kids to do. I mean, this is totally out of the box. And so they weren't prepared either. But Rupert and his crew and his son all went in, and a couple of other adults did go in, but mainly they were just on the beach in shock of watching their kids have so much fun and laughing and playing and trying to talk.
I can well imagine. So for families who want to participate, are you already filled up for the August camp?
We are, but we will do one in June because the waves are going to get big now. We have 50-foot waves here during the winter.
Wow.
So we're going to shut this down this month. But next year we'll do it in June, July, and August.
Okay.
And we'll have one per month. And just go to our website. You'll see when it comes up. We'll have a schedule eventually. And it'll show what days these are going to be. And people can contact us, and we will get them on the list.
Okay, we're showing your website right now for people to be able to go to. And I think it's absolutely amazing not only that you're doing this, but you're finding sponsors to be able to do it so that the families don't have a cost, Rocky.
Yeah, we did this for free, and we want to continue to do this for free.
Well, I just think that that's absolutely amazing. And I know that both Horseboy and the Half Moon Bay Surf Club, that part of the help me with who facilitated it was an organization called Square
Pegs, yes.
Square Pegs.
Yeah.
And so people can also, because I know that on their website there were a lot of testimonials where parents had written in and said how amazing it was, and there's pictures that people can look at and watch the video. So squarepegs.com, I believe it is, or is it?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
I think it's .com.
And if not,
it could be .org.
It could be .org, but it could be both of them. But so people should check that out. A really amazing thing that you guys are doing. And so 8 children. And
we had 8. We could probably, if it, we want to put 3 of our surfers on each child. So right now, 8 seem to work. Hopefully we can get into the 10 and 12 range. I think that's the maximum we can do, because I want 3 of the kids on each autistic child, plus a couple of parents in the water, plus parents on the beach watching.
Sure, absolutely. Safety is paramount. But you said that the swords helped to get 7 of the 8 in the water. So what helped to get the 8th one in the water? Did they just want to go without the sword?
No, the 8th, it was as a high functioning boy. He, 16 years old, he was articulate, really was a great boy, but he was just shy.
Yeah.
And so one of the surf coaches, Mike Wallace, spent about 2 hours just hanging out with him, talking, finally got him in a wetsuit, and finally got him in the water. And it took about 2.5 hours. But we got him in the water, and once we got him in the water, he just loved it. And his mom wrote us a very long email about what it's like to be a parent of an autistic child, and how patient we were, and where did we learn so much patience. And you know what? I don't know where it came from. It just came from the group. We just had patience and worked with the kids and never pushed them into it to do this. And finally he came around and went in. So
wow, absolutely incredible. Emily's telling me that it's squarepegfoundation.org, that's the website to go to. So
Joelle's a great lady, by the way. She's a marvelous woman, too.
Well, I think that you're all pretty marvelous. And we all know how hard it is to get one group of people to do something. And the fact that your 3 groups could come together and make this amazing camp, that the kids were riding on horseback and surfing. I just can't even imagine the boundaries. It had to have been life-changing, Rocky.
For me, definitely it was a life-changing experience, and I know for a lot of the surfers on the surf club, it has definitely changed their life. Definitely has.
Well, I want to thank you for having the perseverance that you have, because we tried so hard to get you on the show the other day, and then to be able to have you on today. I want to thank you for being somebody who, when you heard about this, said yes. And that you're going to continue it. I think it's absolutely amazing. I hope you'll keep in touch with us, and for sure tell us who your sponsor is, because we'll plug them.
I will do that.
And because we like to reward people for doing the right things, and that's definitely a wonderful thing. And keep us posted about how this goes, because I think this is remarkable what you're doing.
It's great. It's a lot of fun too.
Well, thank you so much, Rocky, and full steam ahead.
Thank you very much.
Good job. All right, well, we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back in just a few minutes. Don't forget that at the top of the hour, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. Stick with us.
Positive behavior support is really looking at taking applied behavioral analysis to the systems level. In other words, is moving in terms of, we do a lot of work with schools, is how do you take applied behavioral analysis and have that available and implemented with good treatment integrity for all children. So not just children with autism, but children with various disabilities, or children who don't have disabilities but may have some challenging behavior. And so our goal is really to develop systems, right, to support those children, and really work on teaching them strategies, teaching them the social skills to be able to be more effective in life, more effective in their school, more appropriate in terms at home. We do a lot of work with families in terms of teaching the families the same thing along those lines. So it's really taking applied behavioral analysis beyond the individual student, right, to a system. Is how do we get applied behavioral analysis that works for all children in a school.
I think that's wonderful, because we talk all the time about getting teachers trained in ABA for our kids, but the truth is it would be effective for all of the children in the classroom. Right. And how do we go about convincing the schools that it's going to be so awesome for them?
Well, one of the things we do is really look at discipline issues in schools. And so one of the measures we use is students being referred out of class. And so one of the things we look at in terms of through the methodology, through the implementation, is we see big reductions in terms of kids being sent out of class, remaining in class, being on task, which affects both children with autism as well as the other students. We also see individuals in terms of academic performance, if they're in class and on task, better academic performance. And really, when you look at what does that mean, school-wide positive behavior support, it means there's a proactive preventive mission statement that we're looking at reducing reactive, exclusionary, punitive practices. We're looking at in terms of having clear expectations, like in a school, to be respectful, be responsible, be safe. We're looking at really teaching all students in terms of what that means in all different areas. What does that mean in the cafeteria? What does that mean on the bus? Coming up with an acknowledgement system, a reinforcement system as well. So the website is pbis.org. Okay. So you can go on, there are videotapes on there. It's your tax dollars at work. There are ways to talk about how do you get it in your state. A number of states, there are right now 17,000 schools across the country that are implementing school-wide positive behavior support. Some states, like Illinois, has about 2,500 schools that are implementing. So it's more and more being disseminated across the country, where people are looking at evidence-based interventions and how do you bring evidence-based interventions into schools.
Welcome back. I'm busy sending emails. I love it when you guys write in, and I wanted to take a second and go back in, and we got so many things going on here. Discussions. I tried to do too many things at one time, but I wanted to go in and read some more of the things that you guys wrote for a question of the day, which was, what's the funniest thing that has happened to you in relation to autism? Okay, so a bunch of different comments here. We're going to read some of them. Somebody said, this morning I said to my kid, "Can you believe you start first grade on Monday?" To which he replied, "I cannot believe it. Thank you, little Einsteins." Absolutely love it. Another person who says, when my son scripts VeggieTales movies, I am a caterpillar. Well, that is only true. My father was a caterpillar, my mother was a worm, but I'm okay with that now. Or when he scripts Medea, how you doing? Some very funny things that will come out of our kids' mouths, because we know that kids will hear things, right? That there's a certain amount of, we call it scripting, that they hear something in a movie or on TV, and then that becomes the thing that they say. Not always appropriate. My son is very good at saying phrases that he's picked up from different shows and things, and there was one phrase that he said something about that something smelled like the back end of a goat after something. It was just this phrase, this really long phrase, and I said, where on earth did you get that? And it was something on Nickelodeon. Okay, another person who says that Dora the Explorer, I'm not getting the whole thing here, that their child goes into speaking into Spanish from Dora the Explorer, I think is the gist of that one. Very, very fascinating. My son is 5 and has difficulty with language. I was buttoning up his shirt and counting the buttons for him. When I was done, he counted them back in Spanish. Okay, so that was in response to the other one. The funny thing was the look on my husband's face. I'm sure it mirrored the expression on mine, and thank you, Dora the Explorer, I guess, LOL. When I remember a time when my son, he was just learning about different languages, and he was probably already in first grade, but he wasn't aware of the fact that there were other languages. It was just one of those things that he just didn't pick up on. I think when he thought people were speaking and he didn't understand, it was because he wasn't understanding it. He didn't get the concept that there are different languages and different people speak different languages. And so there was an instance when one of our therapists, who is also very fluent in Spanish, used an expression and said something in Spanish. I mean, I do it all the time. We live in a very cosmopolitan place where a lot of languages get spoken, and I will sometimes respond and say something in Spanish, and sometimes I've been known to break into other languages as well. But I just never noticed that I was doing it and didn't comment on it to my son. So he thought all those things that I was saying were English and that he just wasn't understanding them. And actually, in some cases, he was understanding them because it's just a term that he had picked up. And but there was a moment when he started to learn, and we started saying, well, no, that's actually a different language. And our therapist said something in Spanish, and my son turned and said, "Are you speaking Chinese now?" And we had a good laugh over that too. No, we're not speaking Chinese. And somebody wrote in and said, we need more laughs. We absolutely need more laughs. Somebody who said, my son also scripts. Oh my goodness, the crazy things that he says, can't even count them. Every time he speaks. Yesterday, he didn't want to go to camp for that moment anyway, and he shouted, "Burn this place to the ground." What he meant was, I don't want to be here, right? But our kids script and come up with these ways that they've heard to be able to communicate. Very interesting. It's ending up being a lot of things about scripting, which, unexpected. Let me go to one of the other sites here to see what you guys have written in. See here. Thanks for hanging with me. I can't walk and talk and chew gum at the same time, right? Also want to remind you that we've been talking about a lot of different things, and on Tuesday we're going to have an author who's written a book about how to teach art to children on the autism spectrum. It's really a very comprehensive book. We're going to have Michonne Reynolds with us on Tuesday. Just want to give you a little heads up about that. Somebody who wrote in says, so far I haven't experienced anything funny, but a lot of fun and exciting things like seeing my girl get closer and interacting more and more and learning new stuff all the time. I think that is a wonderful, wonderful, it can't all be laughs and hilarity, right? But there are moments, and we have to stop and appreciate, because some of them are pretty hilarious. All right, we're going to take a short break. We're going to come back and have one more segment. We have to do our social skills tip, and then it is my expectation, I'm confirming, that we are going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox with us here in the studio, so stick with us.
ACT Today, or Autism Care and Treatment Today, was founded in 2004 by several passionate parents who believe that access to early, effective treatment is vital for individuals with autism. Together with Dr. Doreen Graham-Pache, the world's leading provider of therapy for autism, this group created ACT Today to do just as the name implies, take action immediately to treat autism spectrum disorders.
A lot of families and parents and even physicians don't yet accept the fact that we are recovering children with autism.
In 2006, inspired by her struggle to get treatment for her young son Wyatt, television producer and author Nancy Alspaugh Jackson and her husband Reed hosted a backyard benefit for the foundation called Denim and Diamonds for Autism. Tens of thousands of dollars were raised, and in 2008, Alspaugh Jackson took the helm of ACT Today as executive director.
This country has to come together to save a generation of children.
With a dedicated board of directors, a small but committed staff called the A-Team, as in autism, ACT Today is making a huge difference in the lives of children across the country. Grants that fund programs for behavior therapy, special needs schools and summer camps, medical needs like diagnostic tests and special diets, basic safety equipment such as helmets for children who repetitively bang their heads, and fencing for those who wander, assisted technologies and assistance dogs.
Hi, my name is Max, and I love my iPad too. It's so great. I can take photos.
In 2010, ACT for Military Families became the first national campaign to benefit military children with autism.
I'm Joe Montaigne. As a father of a daughter with autism, I know the challenges that brings.
ACT Today continues to educate and raise national awareness on the need for early and intensive intervention for an epidemic that affects at least 1 in 110 children.
I called on November 1st. And I'm like, how am I going to get notified? How are you going to let me know? And they ended up looking and they informed me that he had received the grant, which was like a blessing from above.
Act Today, fulfilling its mission of helping families with autism, one child at a time.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and it's time for the social tip of the week. We know that an autism diagnosis is going to have a component of a social deficit, that there is a lack somewhere in the social arena, whether the child has PDD-NOS, autism, or an Asperger diagnosis. There is, I guess with PDD-NOS, it's possible that there is minimal to no social deficit, but I would venture that when you've got a PDD-NOS, there's got to be at least a little bit of that, a component of it. Very important then that we work on these skills, that we help to strengthen the social skills that our children do have, and to shore up the skills that they don't have, to give them opportunity to get better at the things that they are not good at. You know, it's so hard when it comes to social things because it seems so much of it is unspoken. And I know we've been talking a lot this week about teaching functional communication skills and focusing on that rather than focusing all of our energy on vocal speech. And I kind of want to go back to pointing out how much communication happens when we are not saying anything. You know, the Oscar-winning film this year was The Artist, and while there are textural things in the movie, no words are spoken, or I think there's one word spoken in the movie. I have not yet seen it, so I don't know. But in any case, there is so much that can be communicated that just by the look that somebody has on their face, a gesture that they make, you know, the way that they're holding their body, there are all these clues that are not spoken, and they're not always crystal clear to any of us, right? And a person's ability to get along with others and to communicate really effectively with others is often driven by their ability to pick up those clues. My son and I were just talking about this last night because we have a dog, and the dog is relatively new to us, and my child has not spent a great deal of time around dogs. And we got a big dog because he needs a big dog. He is, you know, going to be a big kid. He's very tall, and you know, he needs a dog that he can interact with. And she's a very sweet dog with us, not necessarily with everybody else. Although, can I tell you how much better she is? That we sent her to her own intensive behavior camp and came back, and she is ever so much better. And not only that, we were trained, and I now understand what her behaviors are saying. I needed that course, and I'm trying to help my son to be able to understand her behaviors. And he was petting her on the face, and he was very interested yesterday in her whiskers and the little moles that come out of her whiskers. And so he wanted to be touching the moles there in her whiskers and touching them, and the dog was pulling her face away. And, you know, clearly to me saying, I don't like that. Right? And it was not clear to my son. He was not picking up on those clues because he hasn't been around dogs. And I was making the point to him, look, you know, what is she doing? What is her body doing that's letting you know what she's thinking? She can't talk to you, so what is her body doing? Let's put on our investigative hats here and figure out if we can piece together the clues. And I said, you know, if her head is going like this, do you think that's her saying, oh, I just love that, do it more? Or is that her saying, stop it, that's making me really uncomfortable? And of course, you know, I got a little bit of attitude that he was like, I don't think she doesn't like it. And I said, oh. And so we were sitting there on the couch with the dog, and I just kind of leaned on him a little bit. And he kind of scooched back to make more room for me, right? And I just kept leaning into him. And finally he went, Mom, you know, come on, you're taking my space. And I said, yes. And how did you let me know that I was taking your space? He said, well, I moved away. Why couldn't you get, oh. And he is at the point where he can connect that and go, oh. And I said, but you know what's lovely for you is that you have the words to finally say, Mom, I've moved away twice. What do I have to do to get you to stop crowding my space? And I said, poor Daisy. She doesn't have the words to do that. And you know, I don't think that we entirely got that lesson yesterday. I think we're still going to have to work on that lesson from time to time. But I'm giving him the opportunity to learn, and it is something that we'll kind of put into rotation. And all of those different things, all of those different clues, how many clues are there socially, right? Oh, I just want to pick up the keyboard and bang my head. There are so many clues. And even an adult my age, I'm still trying to figure out, well, what did that mean? And the person was standing there and did this, and, you know, what did that mean, right? Let's not even talk about all the people in the world who are dating. I don't know how you guys negotiate that whole minefield, right? That's a whole other thing. But my point here is that there's a lot of nonverbal communication. And we can work on developing that ability to read it for a young person. And you might think to yourself, well, that seems like something that happens a little bit later. Yeah, but where do we start it? We start it very young with a child. Even a child who doesn't have a whole lot of skills, we're going to work on something called non-vocal imitation. So being able to have a child just mimic what you are doing, so that if you touch your nose, they touch their nose. It's the very beginnings of them being able to imitate, so that later on we can build on that skill in a variety of different ways. I mean, first of all, you know, for a child to be able to imitate what's happening that somebody else is doing, quite the skill, and when they are adept at it, can be very helpful to them. One of the things that they were saying yesterday, Justin and Zev from The Amazing Race, where it all fell apart for them, was a moment in which Zev was having to learn how to do a dance, and it was just like really hard for him to get it exactly the way the person was doing. It was just so frustrating. Well, we know that that can be a difficulty if you're on the autism spectrum. But the earlier you start to work on that skill with a child, and you start with something as simple as, you know, touch your nose and scratch your head and all these, you know, different things, but you can build from there, so that a child can learn how to dance. A child can learn how to mimic something for a sport, so that you're working on those gross motor things. A child can mimic what they're doing for their hand skills, but it builds into other things, even being able to learn through observation, so that and pairing that with identifying social cues, so that if a group of children are somewhere on the playground and all the other children stop what they're doing and stand up very straight and tall in this thing of respect, that even if the child doesn't know, okay, the visiting dignitary has walked on to the playground, that they're cueing into what's happening non-verbally with their peers and saying, I don't really know what's going on, but everybody's being quiet and standing up straight, so maybe I better too. Right? And you might think to yourself, well, you know, isn't that kind of teaching them to be a lemming and go with the flow and do all of those things? You know, it is important for our kids to be able to pay attention and see what's happening and respond. You know, we're going to teach them other skills so that they don't necessarily follow everybody to do everything. But how important is it going to be for your child in a safety situation if they're seeing everybody else running for the exit and they haven't been told what the problem is, to know, though, there is something going on and I need to get out, right? Very, very important. So all of those clues, being able to look at things in context, understand what's happening, when you have to be able to mimic other people's behavior, and putting that all together is going to help a child to be more successful in social situations. And we do start with that non-vocal imitation and start very, very young. Key here, making it fun, right? Making it as fun as possible. Think about, I remember for my son in kindergarten, one of their favorite things that they would do, they would have their center groups and everything, and from time to time, the teacher, who was fabulous, would say, okay, it's time to shake out all your yayas. And she had her tape player there and would play a tape, CD of something, and one of their favorite things to sing was, it was called Tony Chestnut. And And so when they would do this song, they had all these little movements that they had to do together. And so they would point to their toe. So toe, knee, point to their knee. Then chestnut, so they would point to their chest, and then they would knock themselves in the head that the noggin was their nut. And it was this whole big song about Tony Chestnut and how much they loved Tony Chestnut. And but there was a certain amount of being able to follow and move, and very social, very, very social, got them moving, got the yayas out, but also an opportunity. We all know that song, head, shoulders, knees and toes, knees and toes. I always promise I'm not going to sing on the show. And you will see in one of the recent episodes on the A Word that Jack Riley, that they were doing that song with him, building fluency of, can you do all these things quickly? You're helping to strengthen the connection between I'm thinking it and I'm doing it. It's going to help with so many skills, you guys. So starting with non-vocal imitation, great lessons and skills if you don't have any on your own, but there are those wonderful songs that you can be doing, and there are many of them, very age appropriate for kids who are preschool, kindergarten, and first grade. But if you have a child who's older, who does not have the ability to do non-vocal imitation and is not starting to pick up those cues, it might be worthwhile to go back to the beginning. I'm sure that there are more age-appropriate things that you can be doing with the child to get them to do that non-vocal imitation. There are all those games. I'm just thinking about every single game system now has something where you're imitating. We just got the Michael Jackson dance experience. It's non-vocal imitation. The little shadow does this, and then you have to do it too. Find the thing that's reinforcing it. It may not be the Michael Jackson experience. It may be a different, but there are lots of things out there to be able to do that. Really worthwhile social skill. Surprising, right? Okay, let's take a break. We'll come back. I don't know if we're being joined by Dr. Tarbox. We're not being joined by Dr. Tarbox. He is being held up in a meeting, unfortunately. So we'll have other things for you. I always love to talk about challenging behavior. Maybe it's time to take on challenging behavior, so stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provide you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. So I was saying to you that we were going to have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and unfortunately we're not able to have Jonathan Tarbox, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, because he has been called into a meeting, and you know, sometimes that happens. But the thing I'm thrilled about is that we have some more of these ABAI interviews that I want to be able to show you. We went to this conference in Seattle, ABA International. What an amazing, amazing event that it was. You can't imagine the scope of this thing. There were meetings across a city block in Seattle. It was absolutely mind-boggling to me as a parent who really, honestly, I refer to ABA as the autism miracle in my living room, and I know that it's part of my job on this planet to help make sure that more kids get the opportunity that my son had to have access to this amazing therapy, which allows them to make progress and meet goals and surpass goals and make progress. Make progress, make progress, make progress. And I, you know, I like to think, I always tell you, I am not an expert in ABA. Woo, not an expert in ABA. But I like to think that I know a little bit about what's going on in the world of ABA, and it was very humbling for me to find out that I have no clue whatsoever. None. And we went to this conference, and I saw the magnitude and the scope of the people that are working on this and being able to figure out how to even hone it and be even more effective, more efficient with our kids. It was just amazing, you guys. Truly, truly amazing. And that they were so giving of their time. When we said to them, you know, we're a program, primarily our audience, parents and teachers and some practitioners, and we're trying to get information out. They were so thrilled to give of their time. So we were able to run around, you know, really on the fly, catch people in hallways right after they spoke and stuck a microphone in their face and said, talk to us. And everybody had different areas of expertise that they were presenting on for that particular weekend. And, well, weekend, it was like a 5-day thing. We were there for the weekend. And we've been showing some of these interviews to give you a taste of what we saw. I want to encourage you to go. You can go. And by the way, they not only have the ABA the International, which is the big, huge event from people all over the world, but they have smaller events that happen around the world that are perhaps closer to you and smaller so that, you know, you can go and spend a day or two. I would encourage you to check that out and see if there's one that you can go to, because there is something empowering about going and hearing these things and meeting these people and having them as a resource. Of course, we're going to be presenting their information to you so that you can have them as a resource, but if you have the time, if you have the ability, if it's close enough, I encourage you to go to some of these things yourself. Now, I've said from the beginning that ABA, not something that was invented just to work with our kids on the spectrum, right? It is a science that has been around for many, 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 many years before anybody thought to do anything with anyone on the autism spectrum. Coincidentally, though, what they discovered when they did work with children on the autism spectrum with ABA within certain confines, and what I'm talking about is 25 to 40 hours a week over a minimum of 2 years, okay? What they found then was it's very effective at creating progress with children on the spectrum. But at least half of this event, I would gauge, the ABA-I, yes, ABA-I, Alphabet Land, conference, at least half of it seemed to me to be about things that were not related to autism, which was equally fascinating to me. I didn't spend time getting as many interviews in that area, but I thought it was interesting. And we had the opportunity to talk to a gentleman who is a member of the House of Representatives for the state of Massachusetts. And I thought it was particularly interesting because, you know, I'm always saying to you guys, you know, we can use this on our children on the autism spectrum, but we can also use this for ourselves. We can use this in our relationships with our significant others. We can use this with our mothers-in-law. We can use this with our kids' teachers. And this particular gentleman was at the event giving a talk about how to use the principles of ABA with our politicians. Ooh, well, that was interesting to me, especially in this election year. And so we wanted to take a moment to speak with him, and so hear what this gentleman has to say. We think of ABA and we always think of it as having to do with autism. We know that it wasn't invented for autism, but how are you applying ABA to the idea of voting?
First of all, I'm here telling people that if you're a behavior analyst, you obviously have techniques and strategies that work to change people's behavior. And those strategies can work with individuals with autism, individuals with you know, I've seen it in sports, I've seen it in a variety of places. It also works, I know it's kind of a secret, but it also works, you know, in the political realm, although not too many people are doing it. So if you want to influence politicians' behavior, you know, why not use the strategies, you know?
So what can we be doing to do that? What do you suggest?
Interact with your legislator. You know, so first thing, you register to vote. Second, find out who represents you, whether it's in Congress or the state level. Third, before you interact with them, you ought to find out, you know, how do they like to be contacted? Is a phone call best? Is an email? Is a letter? And so what you're trying to do is in essence, from a behavioral perspective, you know, provide and create the right situation for getting a response, and then reinforcing that response.
Makes sense.
So it's no different than what, you know, what parents do with their kids. Okay. Only now you're dealing with legislators and legislative staff. I mean, I can on a given day get 200 or 250 emails. Right. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to see who sent the email. Yeah. Okay, and I want to see if you're a constituent of mine. If you're from someone else's district, then I will send you on to that legislator, because that's who you should be interacting with. Right. And the reality is I've got to represent 40,000 people, and I can't respond to 140,000 people. So it's important when you interact to identify yourself, to make sure that you're calling the right person. And when you do that, what our office does, I mean, I may be the unusual person. I read all my emails, you know, and respond to them. So I want to see, are you my constituent? And what you're also trying to do is establish a relationship. So it's good to know what your interests and what your concerns are. Also what your expertise is. So when something comes up, for example, dealing with autism, then I may call those parents who I know who have children who are on the spectrum, saying, okay, what do you think about this particular law that's being proposed? Or does this regulation make sense to you? So you're trying to initially establish credibility. I think that everybody should be responded to, because the reality is, I don't care whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whether you're liberal or a member of the Tea Party. You know, if you live in the 2nd Hampshire District of Massachusetts, you're stuck with me. Yeah. I'm representing you. So you may be as far, you know, 180 degrees away from me on the political spectrum, but if you don't speak to me or let me know what your issues and concerns are, then I can't represent you. And I think sometimes, particularly the way things have been operating in Washington on such a partisan level, you know, people just diminish the value of something someone has to offer because they're the opposite party, and I don't think it should be that way.
Getting back to, because I love this idea of interacting with our different representatives in this way and having it all make sense. Anything else that you can tell us to do to help to get them to behave in the way we want them to behave and vote the way we want them to vote?
Well, I think part of it also is, you know, and this is probably the most difficult piece. Most people are just scared. It's like, you know, I can't call my congressman. I can't call my state legislator. You know, I'm so nervous. I don't. You know, take a breath. Realize that on the issue that you're concerned about, let's say an autism issue, you are the expert. Yeah. They're not. And so what you need to do is take that breath, but also, you know, I don't want to say dumb it down, but to some degree you have to. Okay. So no jargon. You really don't want to talk about ABA. You don't want to talk about, you know, specific, you know, techniques or strategies, because sometimes you have individuals who don't know the difference between behavior analysis and psychotherapy. Right. Okay, so you need to make sure they understand. I think the other thing is to try to do it not in a theoretical or a philosophical or ideological level, but get it down, just get down and dirty with the details. Mm-hmm. You know, I'll often tell people, you know, if you want to advocate and lobby for something, you know, bring a picture of your kid. You know, get it down to this. We're not talking about numbers here in a spreadsheet for budget items or issues. We're talking about real people. Mm-hmm. This is my son. This is my daughter. These are her needs. This isn't what's happening, or this is what's happening and shouldn't. And it doesn't have to be, you know, a lot of data from 100 people or 150. Just those one or two that really could make the difference.
Welcome back. Kind of fascinating, right? You know, I'm a person who's very fond of saying we all get to have our opinions and we all get to express them in the way that we want to, especially in the voting booth. And I hope that it's a perfect time of year, if you're not yet registered or if you've moved recently, to re-register. Register or re-register to vote. And you heard it from a politician who is also a BCBA that you have the ability to affect change. I certainly enjoyed, he and I talked a while off camera, and I said, I feel like I've tried some of these things with my politicians and it hasn't been as effective as I had hoped it would be. And, and I think that it's interesting because I certainly want a politician that responds when I call. But I do know that every time I do participate in something political, and I am a very active member on autismvotes.org, I get their alerts, and when they tell me that, something's going on, I try to make a moment in my day, even if it is just to forward a form letter or call, really what it comes down to. And I do have some friends who work in politicians' office and that tell me they literally sit there with a clipboard and they make hash marks, for and against, and that they have their things that they're interested in, but that they are very aware of those little hash marks. And I know I hate to be reduced to a hash mark. I really don't want to be a hash mark, but it makes a difference. It absolutely makes a difference. And, it's that thing of throwing one more log on the fire so that it blazes. And we know that lobbyists and other organizations and other groups are trying to get their logs on the fire, and our voices are heard, because as much as they like the money that come from the corporations, corporations are run by individuals who get one vote at a time in the voting booth. So we still do have that power. I hope that you're taking advantage of that power, and I hope that you are taking a moment to register to vote. I'll talk in a second about something that I read on Facebook that really, really moved me last night. But because I know how hard it is to take the time, but I think it's pretty important. Our voices need to be heard. But this whole idea of using ABA, the principles of ABA, in these very creative ways to get the kinds of things that you want. And that we can do that with our politicians, have our voices heard. And then what's the next bastion after that? If we get the politicians to listen to us, maybe this is a great way to get people in your family to listen to you. Use the principles of ABA. Maybe it's a great way to get the people in your school district district to listen to you. It's just a concept, just an idea, something to see if it works. Do some scientific experiments for yourself. See if rewarding good behavior and getting to the point where you've gotten somebody to engage in the good behavior and then reinforce them, see if it's going to maintain. And not spending the time nagging. My son the other day said to me something about, Mom, you really do like to nag. And I said, yes, I do. I really do. But I know it doesn't work. I know it doesn't work, even though I enjoy it and I engage in it, and I think that someday nagging is going to work. I'm just real convinced of it, apparently by the amount that I do it. But we know that it doesn't. We know that it doesn't, and it really, as much as I think I enjoy it in the moment, it is not nearly as pleasurable as having true compliance and having a working, functional relationship. Just saying. That's where I'm trying to keep my head. And it's interesting because, and I hope it's okay to share this, that somebody I'm friends with on Facebook last night wrote a comment that it just really took my breath away, and I'm really going to paraphrase here because I want to preserve their anonymity. But they were saying that they ran into somebody in their community that used to work with their child at their school. And that they were having a conversation, and the person was saying, you know, how is your little guy? And they were talking about it and how, you know, where the child is at school now and so on and so forth. And in the course of this conversation, you know, I don't know whether it was in a grocery store or whatever, that the person disclosed that for the last couple of years, while she was on the team taking care of this child, that there were some issues going on in her life, some really severe medical issues in her husband's life. I mean, just like severe. And the mom was saying, I don't know how this could have been, that this person who showed perseverance and patience and kindness, who came in and worked with my child on a daily basis, and how did it get past me, that this person was having a life too, and that was having all of these things go on in their life. And she was, I just thought, painfully honest and said, you know, this is one of the things I hate about autism, because we were so injured as a family by what we were going through, that she said, I stopped sending birthday cards. I stopped telling the people that were in my life that I cared about them, and that I stopped realizing that everybody else was going through stuff too. Because I had to help my child, but I really hate that. And I just thought it was this really amazing, powerful statement that was made. And I appreciated the fact that she didn't try to say that she was wrong to have done that. Because, you know, it's that conversation that we were having the other day, that when the kitchen's on fire, you let other stuff go. You just have to. You have to. But that it leaves a lot of holes. And that, you know, I'm certainly seeing now that we've reached a point where we no longer have intensive ABA. We no longer have intensive autism in our house. And I'm trying to pick up the threads of the life that we let go of. And it's different. We're really 6 years later here, and people have moved, and I've lost touch with some people. Other people I've gotten closer with, that's absolutely true. But you know, we lost some stuff along the way. And in that loss of stuff along the way is sometimes the consideration of what other people were going through. You know, I will say that one of the things that happened to us when my son was diagnosed, and no small part thanks to a friend who was the first person to say to me, okay, you know, that somebody had said something, somebody in my family had said something, and I was literally destroyed by it, and was crying to her, and she said, but do you think everything is okay? And I said, no, I don't think that everything is okay, but we've asked, and we, you know, the pediatrician said everything is fine, and she said, but do you think that everything is okay and that you should settle for that answer? And I know that was hard for her to have said. That's a really good friend. And as a result of that, I made the phone calls that I needed to make so that my child moved towards a diagnosis. you know, we got the diagnosis and it was scramble, 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 all this difficult, you know, scramble, 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 get on the waiting list for ABA, start ABA, scramble, 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 fight with the school district, you know, go through due process and mediation. And we finally finished mediation. And I want to say that it was on the 27th of September. And I remember driving home and going, okay, we don't have to fight anymore. We can get back to the business at hand of really, you know, getting this done. And so there was like a blissful week. And I think a week to the day from that, I got the phone call that friend, the one who had said, but, you know, do you think that everything is okay, had been diagnosed with cancer. Right? You know, and I will say this, that what it meant was that I couldn't go too far down the rabbit hole, that I had to say, look, there's stuff happening in other people's lives too. And, you know, she and I held on to each other through that whole journey. Gonna get emotional. But we did. We held on to each other, and you know, I tried to show up for her, and I can't say that that I did in a perfect way, but when she was done with chemo, she showed up for me in a huge, major way, and you know, it was one of those things that we held on to each other in the storm. And I remember as we were starting to come out of the house is on fire portion of the program, right? Getting an email from somebody that really brought me back down to my knees, because it was about a fundraiser that was happening for a mom whose child was diagnosed with autism, who was not having the same age as my child, by the way, and was not having the tremendous progress that my son was having. He was having progress, but it was taking longer, and the mother had been diagnosed with terminal cancer. And I remember calling my friend and saying, you know, we have both held on to each other through this, and we've both experienced the pain of the things that we have gone through, and experienced and shared that other people around us have not understood what we've been having to go through. And we've, you know, shored each other up. But imagine if we had had both things happening at once, and luckily my friend had responded so well to the chemo and is cancer-free and has been for a number of years now. And again, my son was making tremendous progress. And here was an instance of a person who was not having progress from the chemo, and her child was not having some progress. Absolutely, I don't mean to poo-poo progress, but it wasn't as fast and as quick and as efficient as the progress that my son was having. And I said, imagine, because there's always somebody who has it worse, right? You know, and at last I heard, and this was many years ago, the mom was still very much alive. And I will say that I haven't heard anything about them in quite a while now, but my hope is that they are all still okay. And at the last that I had heard, that the child had made a lot more progress. But it is mind-boggling to think that there's a lot going on in the world. And we have to focus on the things that we have to focus on in the time that we have to focus on them. And when your child is diagnosed with autism, other stuff goes by the wayside. It does. And some of it is your ability to be compassionate towards others and think about what they're going through. And I do think that's something to be sad about. I think it's very real, though, and I think that in a lot of cases it's really necessary. I will say I don't think it has to last forever. Kitchen's on fire, you got to put the kitchen fire out. Clearly this mom who wrote this was in a place where she could hear what the other woman was going through. But again, I want to remind you, if you're in a place when you can't hear about what others are going through, forgive yourself. Forgive yourself. You are working on something that is really important, and a day will come when you can ease up a little bit. We're going to take a break because I got to wipe face off, but we're going to come back. I think actually we're going to show you more ABAI interviews, so let's take a look and see what Emily has for us in store. Take a look.
When we have planning families and involve them in the goal setting process. Many of them say that they only have one goal. They want their child to play with other kids and they want them to have friends. We said, what is it that typical peers do well and what is it that they know? And what we found out is that they know a whole lot about their friends. When we ask them, tell me about your friend so-and-so, they're able to speak freely about their interests. So in order to develop friends, you need to be able to have your own interests and share your own interests, but also be aware of the interests of others. So what we decided to do is teach our kids to identify interests of other peers and then use that information. So use those interests and initiate social interactions based on their interests. After doing this intervention, we asked a typical peer in the classroom to be in charge of a special activity that they were doing in the classroom, such as a treasure hunt. And we told him, well, you can't do that alone. You need to have a team. You need to invite some friends. And what we were interested to see is, would they invite a child with ASD? Would they include them in that group? And what we did see is, for one of our participants, he was invited 50% of the time, and other participant was invited each time the opportunity was presented, which was great to see. And most importantly to us, we received great feedback from parents. After doing this intervention, our child really has a friend, a true friend, not a peer that is assigned by the teacher to play with him, but a true friend.
I am the parent of a 22-year-old young man with autism. We were very lucky. He had behavior analytics services from the get-go, and he's done very well. He's in college now, so we're grateful for that. And many years ago, there weren't a lot of services, so I kind of came into the field myself, originally to help my own son, and then later it became a new career for me. We offer networking opportunities, information for parents. Most of our parents have children with autism. We have a website that we share with the Autism SIG, and that address is www.autismppsig.org. A lot of resources. Lots of research articles, conference information, information available for both professionals and for parents about autism treatments and many other behavior analytic topics.
When the Center for Autism at University of Houston clearly got established in 2008, all of our programs are pretty much geared toward younger children, but shortly after we opened our doors, I started getting contacted by parents of children who were older and parents of adults wanting to know what services were available for them. And so I started looking into it and realized that there had been very little research conducted with adults, particularly adults who are considered high functioning, adults who have no intellectual disabilities, and yet they have problems. And one of the biggest ones that I found when I did the research was in obtaining and maintaining employment. In fact, the majority of them are unemployed, which I found really surprising considering they had no intellectual disabilities and were quite capable of doing all kinds of important things for our society. And then, so that kind of caught my interest. And then it's hard to say exactly how I put the two together, but we have a clinic on campus where we provide early intervention services to young children with autism. And I started thinking about some potential vocational training programs for individuals who were high functioning. And I just started thinking about how we provide very structured training. So when we're teaching someone to work with a young child with autism, we provide very structured training, immediate feedback, and many of the procedures that we're teaching them to use with young children are pretty invariant, very scripted. And from what I was hearing in the research, there's been some studies where they interviewed people, adults with high-functioning autism, about employment and why they had trouble at their prior jobs. And a lot of it had to do with inadequate feedback, inadequate training, intolerant coworkers. And I started thinking about the way behavior analysts typically train their therapists. So what I decided to do is do a pilot study, and initially it was just going to be all in role play. So they weren't going to actually work with any young children. But I had never worked with this population. I'd never worked with adults with high-functioning autism. So I didn't know what to expect. And it was just amazing. They picked it up so quickly that we quickly added a phase 2 to the pilot study and had them actually working with a young child too. Initially they learned the components of discrete trial teaching, and they did that in role play, and then we had them work with a young child, teaching them a similar skill, and we showed not only did their skills generalize to the young child, but we showed acquisition of the young child in that skill too. One thing we also did, it's one thing to, come up with very objective definitions of correct use of procedures we're teaching, but there might be some qualitative aspects to teaching that aren't captured by our system. And so in addition to taking data on their behavior in terms of what they were doing when they were teaching, we also showed video clips of them teaching to 3 experts in behavior analysis. We didn't tell them anything other than we would like you to rate this. This is a newly trained person, and we had them use a rating scale and rate how effective they thought they were, how likely they would be to hire them. And we had them rate our participants as well as an undergraduate student who had no developmental no disability, but had never, was a novice, and we just trained her to do the same thing. We put her through the same training, and we also had them rate one of our graduate students in behavior analysis. And what we found was the experts gave similar ratings to the undergraduate student and the graduate student, but lower ratings to our participants, even though the accuracy was the same. They were just as accurate as our undergraduate student and our graduate student. So clearly there were some qualitative aspects of their maybe voice, the tone of their voice, amount of eye contact, things like that. And so I think that would be something to work on next, is looking at that and coming up with ways to teach that as well. We're interested in expanding the teaching to other ABA methodologies. And I'd also like to look at other vocations as well, and looking at vocational skills and the types of skills needed to be successful on the job.
That was the fabulous Dorothea Lerman, and really an amazing, I had so much fun talking to her, and everybody had told me about her beforehand when I was asking, who are the people that would be good interview possibilities and who should I talk to, because this is a world that I don't really know. I'm just being honest with you, and so I was saying, who knows what, and who do I want to talk to? If there's going to be 10,000 people there, narrow it down for me, right? And she was at the top of everybody's list. Everybody's saying, oh, if you get an opportunity to talk to her, really an amazing, amazing woman in the field of ABA. And I found that to be instantly true when I was talking to her, and I think what an exciting project. But it was, I just have to say this, it was just one of 10 things that she was there presenting about. So really, really an amazing woman, and oh my goodness, if you have the opportunity to hear her speak and go and speak with her in person, I think that you'll find the same to be true. We're going to keep on showing you interviews in the coming weeks that we did while we were at ABAI. It was really an incredible time that we had, and I look forward to being able to go back and meet more people and get more interviews, and having some of these people live on the show as a resource for you. So we're at the end of the week and at the end of our show, but I always like to take a couple of minutes to talk about challenging behavior, right? Because this is one of the things that prevents us from getting to the good parts, right? And we've talked all week long about the fact that functional communications has a lot to do with challenging behavior, because if you don't have another way of getting your needs met, then you are going to engage in challenging behavior, either because you think it works or because there's a whole host of reasons why kids engage in challenging behaviors, actually, as I'm talking about it. But we see that when we teach functional communication skills, we are going to decrease challenging behavior. Let's just take a little bit of an example here. That What we saw with Jack Riley, the little boy in the A Word, there was an episode, and they touched on it briefly in this week's episode. There was an episode where they were asking him to sit in a chair, and this was a skill that he'd mastered. He has compliance on that they say, Jack, come and sit down, and he sits down, and it's no biggie, right? He has no problem doing that, except on this particular day, they asked him to come and sit down, and he wasn't doing it. There was no compliance, and once you've asked a child to do something, unless there is a really good reason not to, some sort of functional communication, then you can't really back down, right? Because our consequences have to be consistent. And that's something to keep in mind, that we don't put requests on them that we can't back up, right? So they had asked him to sit down, he wasn't doing it, and so they were physically prompting him, moving him to the chair and going, that's good, and then giving him an opportunity. He flops back on the floor, sit down, and going through this. And it was becoming a full-fledged, at first it went to tantrum, then it went to meltdown, and it was lengthy, it was exhausting for everyone. You can go back and watch the very early tape of it in its entirety. I mean, they did edit some of it out, but you can see that, he is physically exhausting himself. He, turns into octopus legs, and he's trying to get away. And he, they're saying, no, you have to sit. You have to sit in the chair, and they're going to, now because it's gotten to this point, they not only need him to sit in the chair, they need to have him comply with something. And it's exhausting for everyone. The parents are sitting there, the therapist is saying emotionally neutral, but you can tell it's exhausting for everybody, right? It's exhausting for the little boy. Finally, they put something so reinforcing, and they say, do this, and then you're going to get the bubbles, and then you can go, and he wants the bubbles. So finally, he's like, okay, whatever. And he sits in the chair and does the thing, and they blow the bubbles, and they let him up from the chair. And he goes immediately under the dining room table and squats underneath the chair to take a poop. And we know kids have places that they like to poop, right? They want their privacy, and his thing was to go in amongst the center of the dining room table chairs, squat down, take a poop. That's his privacy. This is where he's at in his development. And then there is this moment, and there's this lovely interview with the mom where she says, oh, that's why he was tantruming. That's why that moment was happening. We asked him to sit in the chair, and we were like, oh, well, he knows how to sit in the chair. He knows he's willing to be compliant with that. Why isn't he now? And we, continued to, force him to sit in the chair. And nobody's being abusive to this little boy. Let me say that. And nobody is attempting to be abusive to this little boy. But holding down the consequences on this moment of, no, you need to sit in the chair. But if this child had had the functional communication skills to say, I need to go to the bathroom, this moment would not have happened, right? And the mom was emotional about it, and she said, I feel so bad for him because we didn't know. And so we continued to make him, and in his head, it was an unreasonable request. It was an unreasonable request. You're asking me to sit in a chair, and he wasn't having a problem with sitting in the chair, but he didn't have the way of saying, I have something else I need to do. And the humanity of that, of how, the tragedy of that, of the fact that he went through this very trying moment when in his head he knew he had someplace else to be, and how hard that is as a parent. And the mom expressed and said, I hope that someday soon he has the ability, because how different would this moment have been if he could have pointed to or signed or said, I gotta poop. I gotta poop here. And I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago because, we move along in this very emotional scene with the mom, and we get several episodes down the road, and there's a moment that happens in the hallway by the door of where they do therapy in his bedroom, and Jessica's talking to him and saying, hey, come on, let's do this. And Jack Riley stops and says, give me a minute, I'm pooping. And he literally holds up a finger, I need a minute, I'm pooping, because I've been teaching him how to be able to say to somebody, can I have one more minute? Can I do this first? I need a moment to finish this, or I need to poop. And he says to her, I need something along the lines of, I need a minute, I'm pooping. And she says, oh, you're pooping? And he says, I pooping. And she says, okay. And she, because that's appropriate. That's appropriate to give somebody time and space. You and I are in a meeting and we're having a discussion and I say, excuse me for a moment, I need to use the restroom. You're not going to tie me to the chair, right? But I need to be able to say that. If I just was sitting there in a meeting with you and you were talking to me and I got up and walked away from you, it would not be okay, right? And so we have to have those functional communication skills. And so in the second moment, there is no tantrum, because there doesn't need to be a tantrum. And that so much of the time when our kids are engaged in that challenging behavior, it's because they have no way of letting us know there's something else going on here. I know you can see this, but I'm seeing this. And this is what's going on. And I know what I need. I don't know why you don't know what I need. And the frustration of that. So, I think it's so important when we look at challenging behavior to not take it personally, to not in the moment think, oh, this is endless and boundless. We're never going to get past this. We're never going to get over this. I think it's really important to step back and say, what is the communication? Do you always get to know? No. And, you know, is it always going to be as crystal clear as it is in this example with Jack Riley? No. There are still things that I look at and I go, I don't know why my child tantrum when this happened. But look, we know that a lot of times it's sensory stuff, right? The sensation of needing to poop and feeling uncomfortable about it, doing it in a room full of people, I count that as sensory issue. I've shared before that my son would have a tantrum in the same place, in the same grocery store, every time we would reach a certain place, and I couldn't figure it out, but it was because the tile changed on the floor. We were able to work through that, by the way. He doesn't have a freak out now when tile changes. And there are many other things. It could be as simple as, I was talking earlier about the clinic room that we were in here at CARD, and I finally said one day, I said, you know, there is something about this room that I don't know whether it's, you know, what we're doing or what, there's something about this room, but I'm always getting a headache in this room. And somebody said, you know, I get a headache in this room too. Well, you know what they discovered that it was one of the fluorescent bulbs, the starter was going on it, and it was just flashing so fast that I think a lot of people it didn't bother, but those of us who, you know, are sensitive to those kinds of things, it was just throwing me off. Right? They fixed the light. I was fine. You know, and if that can happen for me, and I don't really know what it is, do we really have to have an expectation that our kids always are going to know to be able to tell us what? So I think, you know, functional communication, key, absolutely so supremely key. Is it 100% of the time? You know, no, because sometimes we can't even language what's happening with us. So I think we have to make room for that, but at least to know that something is being communicated. The thing that I constantly remind myself with my child is that when we get into that, he's telling me something. What is he telling me? And if I can't figure it out, if I really can't figure it out, and he's trying to tell me, you know what I default to? He's uncomfortable. He may not even know why he's uncomfortable, but he's uncomfortable, and that's something that needs to be addressed. Why are you uncomfortable? My child will frequently ask the same question over and over and over again. Losing my voice here. Excuse me. He'll ask the same question over and over and over again. A lot of times it will be, I'm hungry, but other times it's other things. The other day he was asking if he could play a game on my phone. And I said to him, no, honey, you can't play a game on my phone because my battery's about to die and I am expecting a phone call, and so you can't play my phone right now. I'm driving. We get, I don't know, another 100 yards down the road and he goes, Mom, can I borrow your phone? This is really old behavior for my son. But we will cycle in and out of it from time to time. And it frustrates me. I go, why you asked and answered, right? But I have started to remind myself that, you know, there's something else going on. It's not about the phone. There's something else going on. And to start asking him questions about what's going on with you right now. and making him language it to me to be able to put it in terms so that we can figure out what's going on, because he's not listening. He's someplace else. He's feeling uncomfortable. It's not about the phone. He's feeling uncomfortable. That's why he wants the phone. The phone is something to distract him from the fact that he's feeling uncomfortable. Well, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes it's perfectly okay to give him the phone and let him, settle down. But I also want to raise a child who can deal with his feelings. Because heaven knows I want to learn how to deal with mine. And I'm going to school for that. But I want to help him along the way to identify you're feeling uncomfortable. Why? What can we do to make you feel uncomfortable? And it doesn't have to be numb out on a phone. I'm just saying. In any case, think about the challenging behavior, look at it, try to figure out what's really being communicated here. And if you can't figure it out, and when it's really big behavior that is potentially something that could injure themselves or somebody else, don't go it alone. Have a BCBA, be involved with what you're doing. That's just so important. But if it's little things like him in the car asking for the phone, start to think to yourself, what's really being communicated here? And if you can't solve it, see what happens if you allow for the fact that maybe my child is uncomfortable right now about something. They're feeling uncomfortable. And see if that can't help you to emotionally be in a place where you can start to change antecedents and consequences to help the child through it. So we don't have to get to challenging behavior. All right, but functional communication is where we always want to be. As this show ends, I want to remind you that the conversation continues on and on, where you can talk to us and you can be talking to each other, which is fabulous. Emily's going to cycle through some of the different ways that you can get a hold of us. There is our email address. We love it when you email us, but we also enjoy it when you call us, when you Skype us. Facebook is a great way over the weekend that I see you guys talking to each other. Feel free to talk on our Autism Live site and to also tweet with us. I do check in on those things from time to time. I do not live on Facebook. I know it says that I'm on a lot because it's logged in on the computer here a lot, but I got a child just like you, so I can't be there all the time. But I am there some of the time, and other people check in as well. So I want to remind you, lots of different ways to watch us. If you're watching us on Blip, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can be watching us on iTunes, and you can be watching us on Ustream. All of these different ways are there for you for free, for you to be able to get the information that you want. Be a part of the conversation. Add what you have to add. I know that wherever you are, you know something that somebody else didn't know. Can I tell you that for years, I had people who were calling me and saying, well, my friend said that I could call you because you've been going through this. And I would say, you can absolutely call me. You can absolutely call me for support, but I'm trying to figure this out too. And they would say, yeah, but you know this. And I would go, okay, all right, yes, I've survived that. I don't know what I know about it, but I've survived that. And what people told me overwhelmingly was, but that helps me to know what you went through. So share what you have. I know that you know all kinds of things that I don't know. Be a part of the conversation. We can do this together. We can all be here, support each other, and help our kids. It is something that we are doing, and we can find ways to do it better. So be a part of the conversation. Tell us how we can help you to do that. That's really what we want to do. We're going to be back on Monday at 9 a.m., a live show on Monday. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.